For those of you in attendance, we'll be starting the Danville Town Council meeting momentarily.
Hello and welcome to the regular meeting of the Danville Town Council for this November 16th, 2021. This meeting is now called to order. Marie, would you mind doing the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Fong.
Here.
Councilmember Stepper. You're on mute, Karen.
Here.
Great. And Councilmember Storer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Arnerich.
Here.
Mayor Morgan.
Here.
All council members are in attendance.
Thank you. Are there any announcements?
Yes, this meeting is being held by teleconference only on Zoom and is being recorded. It will be on the Town of Danville website and available after the meeting. And to provide live comments, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Your name will be announced, your audio will be enabled, and you're asked to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And again, the mayor will open up the item for public comment and you can raise your hand at that time. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that announcement. We appreciate it. The next item is our homage to our flag, of the allegiance to our flag. And this evening, I would love to have Kathy Shiverton lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. This is a privilege. And I have lost you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on then to any of the changes to the order of the agenda. Are there any changes this evening?
Mayor Morgan, there are no changes to the order of the agenda this evening.
Okay, great. For the good of the town is item number 4. The good of the town are items that are not on the agenda, but gives the opportunity for the public to address the council. Once again, for items that are not on the agenda. As our city clerk mentioned earlier, if there is something that you would like to address the council on, whether it's this or an item in the future on our agenda, please press the raise your hand feature. Marie Sunseri will call on you and you will have 3 minutes to address the council. Is there anybody, Marie, that wishes to address us for the good of the town?
Yes, we have, excuse me, one hand raised right now, and that is Zay Perrin.
Oh, okay. And let's go ahead and go to our timer here and bring Zay in. Zay, thank you so much for being here. We haven't heard you in such a long time with your radio voice, but welcome to our council meeting this evening.
Thank you very much, Mayor Morgan, and thank you, council members. I wish that I was here for a happy occasion, but I wanted to bring it to the council's attention and to the town's attention. I have been a resident of Danville for just over 10 years, and I'm sorry to say that my daughter has been racially targeted, profiled, and harassed through her entire tenure in the school district. It has gotten so bad that she has asked me to step forward and speak on her behalf in a want and desire to make things change. You can only imagine how bad it must be for a 16-year-old to ask their parent to go in front of the town council and the school board in their behalf. The last issue that we had, she was called the N-word at San Ramon Valley High School, and the school administration has done little or nothing to act on this. And it is reflective in the school board's current strategic plan and action that it was done so. There is no action to their strategic plan when it comes to equity, when it comes to racial bias and harassment. And I would like to bring it forward so that the town and the council members can hold them accountable for these types of items. The worst portion of this is that she didn't even receive an apology. She received no empathy from the administration. When she asked them and she told them that she did not feel comfortable going to school with this gentleman in her classroom, that she was afraid, that she's physically ill in the morning at the thought of going to school, there was nothing. Nothing at all. I find it abhorrent. I'm disgusted. As the voice of We Are Danville video, I do not feel like me or my family are part of this town. And it starts in our schools. And if the N-word, which is one of the most disgusting words that could be used for a person or people, not acted upon, then how do the other minorities, how do the other ethnicities within the school feel? Who's going to come forward and say anything? And I can tell you, no one. The apathy disgusts me.
Dave, you brought this up to the school district.
I will be presenting at the school board meeting at 7 o'clock. And I will also be commenting on their presentation on the equity portion of their strategic plan, which does not have any action in it. And the equity portion failed at every point in this one specific scenario with my daughter and with every scenario before.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that you're bringing it up to the school district as well. So thank you for bringing that to our attention this evening, and thank you for being here.
Mayor Morgan, I would just add that Zay, I know it takes a lot to come before us, even though it is on Zoom, and appreciate that, as the mayor said. I know we'd all love to hear back from you on what feedback you get with the school district and how we may be able to assist based on those conversations.
Thank you.
Zay, my comment is I'm proud that both you and your daughter have brought it to the forefront. What you described is totally unacceptable. And it's so important that we call this out and do something about it.
Well, if we're all commenting here, I'm sorry, Dave, were you done?
Yes, he's done. Go ahead.
Honestly, I never even thought we would have this conversation right now. So I'm still trying to process all this and what your daughter must be going through. So please sort of keep us informed here, and we will look at this as well as a council. And that's just completely not acceptable. And thanks for coming here this evening, Zay. I appreciate it.
Okay. Karen, did you want to make a statement?
Yes, since we all did. I, have a couple of teenagers now and my grandkids, and the sensitivity of kids and what is said is something that makes them ill to their stomach. It's really hard to get kids to go to school one time when that happens, say, much less so many times. And your daughter is a standout student and a standout volunteer. So we will be conscious of this as we go through our town policies. And we will, of course, have conversations with the school because this is a different bailiwick. And I'm glad you're going directly to their meeting too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all for the support.
Absolutely, Zay, and you yourself have been an outstanding member of our community as well. So keep us posted. We are not trying to push it to the school district, but since the incident did happen there, we would really like to know what the outcome is and what they plan on doing. I don't understand why they wouldn't do something about it, and with what you told us, they didn't. So we definitely want to know what's going on. So please keep us posted, and I can guarantee you that I will also be contacting the board and ask them what they plan on doing, and the superintendent, since you don't get anything, and feel free to keep in contact with us. We appreciate that. So thank you for being here this evening, Zay.
Thank you.
Marie, are there any other public comments?
I do
Or-
not see any other hands raised. Oh, there's one. We have Judy Lloyd.
Okay, welcome, Judy.
Hi there. I want to express my support of Zay and his family. This has been going on for too long, and I just want to, my heart goes out to him and Rebecca and Camille. So just thinking of you. This is Judy Lloyd, President and CEO of the Danville Area Chamber. I want to thank all of you at the Town Council for the wonderful ceremony you had last week honoring our veterans and receiving that designation as the Purple Heart community. This was just another touching reminder of the value that our community places on our veterans, and I really appreciated being a part of it. Today, I'm here to talk a little bit about expanded outdoor seating and the vibrant vibe we see in Danville restaurants and retailers. I know that last week you all received a letter from 13 businesses requesting that you consider extending the temporary outdoor seating, also known as parklets, past January 3rd, which was the council deadline that you previously approved. Given that we're still masking indoors and checking vaccination cards at restaurants, it's clear that the pandemic is still with us. What we don't know is how long that will be the case or what new COVID-19 variants may strike. We had all hoped to be done with this by now, and we've all talked about it. But unfortunately, we're not. And while we're making good progress towards herd immunity, particularly here, we're not quite there yet. What I hear now is what businesses are needing is more than ever predictability. So the Chamber would like to encourage a discussion to take place at a study session or another meeting or forum where our businesses might have the opportunity, as well as community, to collaborate with you on pathways forward for the betterment of the community. We are ready to work with you to come up with solutions that benefit the community at large. From what we're hearing, and we're hearing this now a little more frequently, community and visitors to Danville enjoy this option of expanded outdoor dining and want to keep it in place even after the holidays. I also want to applaud Jill Bergman and her team. You know, they've got a lot going on, and they are doing an amazing job fast-tracking efforts to update the downtown master plan, including more permanent options for outdoor dining on public and private property. And I know that's what we really want to move towards. That's what everyone wants to see. We're looking forward to working with you, all of you, as this vision becomes a reality that will make Danville thrive for our retail businesses, our eating establishments, and our entire community. I want to thank you all for listening today, wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and look forward to seeing you at the lighting of the old oak tree on November 26th. Thank you so much.
So Judy, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is if you've been in contact with Jill in reference to the land use and the permitting and all of that. Have you been in contact with when the businesses speak about that? Are you also, my dogs respond as well, are you also telling your the businesses that you've mentioned to make sure that they are getting their land use permits?
I have talked to them. I've talked to Jill and Leon. In fact, I talked to Jill earlier today, and I talk with them probably twice a week on different subjects. So yes, and Jill and I had a very good conversation about this today.
Okay, but that's with Jill. I mean, with the businesses, have you been telling the businesses that have been brought this up? Because we have like a dozen of them that have the parklets or space. Have you had the opportunity to discuss it with them?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, regarding their letter, regarding their concerns, yes, I have.
Okay. Newell? You're on mute, Newell.
Rookie mistake, darn. Robert, I followed your steps, sorry. I think we're at the point in time where I would ask the council that we should consider place this as a agenda item with the intent to extend these on our March or our December 21st meeting. It's the first meeting we have. If we're going to do this, all those restaurants need to know certain that this is going to happen. They have staffing, food, all of that stuff, and they need to be able to plan for the next year. And I would say we should consider it for 6-month extension. More details to follow that we could talk about, but I think we ought to demonstrate that we got to move forward. It's now or never. And I would hope if there's a consensus, ask Joe, our town manager, to put this on that meeting.
If you want a second on that, I 100% agree.
I mean, just a
Okay, so we're not-
consensus. Just
we're
a
not-
consensus.
We're not
Okay,
voting.
so we're not voting on any of these. This is not on the agenda,
It's
so we
just
can't
a
first and
consent.
second, and it's a consensus. So
Just-
why don't we go ahead and do this under town council reports at this point in time? We'll bring it back under town council and have a further discussion under council reports.
But we don't need to do that. Sorry. All we
Okay.
need to do, is there a general consensus to put this item for consideration on the December 21st? If there's no objection, then that's it.
I do. I have an objection. I have an
Okay.
objection.
There's 4 others that do, the rest of us object.
I understand.
I'm all
understand.
in.
Okay, and I'd like to explain that. First of all, I'd like to see these businesses do what we asked back in June and July, which is to go down and get the permits that are required so that we can move forward. If we keep just extending it without having a plan in place, we are not doing our downtown businesses, the ones that don't have it, any justice. So I would like to see us make sure that we're not just extending these parklets indefinitely, that we are also having a plan in effect that takes these businesses to the next step. We can't rely on our new downtown business master plan to kind of problem solve these as well. I think it's important for us to have a plan in place and not just keep kicking it down the road. So these businesses, we asked them in June and July, and 2 of them so far have come back and asked for permits. I would like to see that we ask the other businesses do the same so that we can move forward with this, because we're not.
Renee, are we opening this now to a total discussion? Because
No,
I've got
and
6
you're
things to
right,
say to
Karen.
what you just said.
I'm sorry.
I've got 6 responses to the things you just brought up.
Yeah,
So
we can talk
let me
about
jump
this
in
on the
here, okay? We
21st.
need to.
Okay,
what
we've
we
got
have
Rob
in-
here. Hold
What
on
we
one
have
second,
in front of
please.
us
Let's
here
go
is
ahead.
one question.
Hold on one second, Rob.
Okay, we're hearing arguments pro and con here already from several of you.
That's right.
The only thing you can do right now is talk about whether or not you want to put this on a future agenda. I would really, really urge you to
Not
not
to
get into
discuss
whether
this.
it is or isn't a good thing on either side. Okay, let's.
Okay.
All right, I'm in.
Yes.
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 I'm happy to discuss it.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, that was fun.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move on then. That was the good of the town, and we made the good of the businesses as well. So we'll go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. And consent calendar are items that are considered routine in nature and usually acted upon by one motion by the town council. This is something that a town council member can also remove an item from the agenda to further discuss, as well as public. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anybody on the council that would like to remove something off of consent.
Karen,
Karen?
5.1.
Okay, item 5.1 has been removed. Any other items to be removed? Okay, let's go ahead and open it up and see if there's anybody in the public that would like to see an item removed off the consent calendar, 5.1 through 5.6.
There are no hands raised for that.
Okay, so let's bring it back and discuss item 5.1. Karen?
Okay, this is before what we just had, this not discussion, that I had wanted to change the minutes because my understanding from the last meeting at the beginning of the minutes with respect to these for the good of the town speakers from the restaurant, parklets, and outdoor dining, that we told them that we would be sending them a letter telling them the steps they would have to take for permits and and if they wanted it on the agenda, they would have to put it on the agenda. Neither of these things are reflected in these minutes, and I think that's why we just had the discussion we had.
Okay, that's a good point, Karen. So
I'd
So we
like to
want-
amend the minutes to say that those two things is what we had indicated would come back to them before this meeting, frankly.
Okay, so first of all, we need to have, see that letter. We haven't, so we'd like to see that letter that we had asked to be sent and discussed. And then, because that also goes in tune with what I was saying. So thank you, Karen. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Can we amend the minutes as mentioned? Okay, all right. So any other discussion on 5.1? All right, so do I bring it back to council for a vote on items 5.2 and 5 through 5.6? Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Okay, I have a first, I have a second, I have a second. A roll call, please.
Did you say 5.6 or 5.7?
I said items 5.1 through 5.2 through 5.6.
Okay.
Okay, I have a first and a second, and Marie.
Okay. Consent items 5.2 to 5.6. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Those items were approved unanimously.
Okay, and then we'll go back to item 5.1. Do I have a motion with the amendments?
I so moved.
Okay,
Second.
I have a first and a second.
Okay, Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
5.1 was approved unanimously.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to communications. Item number 6. Item number 6.1. We're welcoming back once again Kathy Shiverton. She wears many hats in our communities, but this evening she's going to be wearing the Measure X update hat. She will be giving us a report on the Measure X Advisory Board member, and this is Kathy Shiverton. And I understand that the county supervisors just barely got off a meeting discussing Measure X, had over 85 public comments made during that time. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan, and thank you for having me here tonight, and good evening to Councilmember Fong and Councilmember Stepper, Councilmember
Thank
Storer,
you.
Councilmember Arnerich. I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. Before I start my remarks, I wanted to comment on Mr. Zay Perrin's comments. It moved me deeply to hear the story that he brought to you tonight about his daughter being victim of racism. And you may be aware that this county passed a resolution last November, a year ago, declaring that racism is a public health crisis. And so I like you, in thinking about what Zay shared with you, to not think of this as an isolated incident, but this is something that children and adults in our community face on a daily basis. And we can talk about the school district needing to do something, but we all need to do something. And I very much took his words to heart, knowing him and his family, and as well as other families who have experienced similar situations. So I did not plan to make a comment about racism tonight, but Zay's remarks really moved me deeply. So I also do want to put on my Discovery Counseling Center Executive Director hat just for a minute to acknowledge and thank you in this public forum for your allocation of funding to support mental health out of the American Rescue Plan Act, and how significant that is to Discovery Counseling Center, and also commend you on the other agencies and nonprofits which you supported too, including supporting and looking at ways we can support those who are unhoused. So congratulations and thank you for that meaningful funding opportunity for many nonprofits, not just Discovery Counseling Center. But as Mayor Morgan said tonight, I will put on my other hat and talk about the Measure X Community Advisory Board, of which I was honored to be a member and was very grateful to Supervisor Anderson for appointing me to this board, which was charged with the responsibility of assessing community needs, focusing on healthcare, emergency response, safety net services, preventive care, affordable housing, and supports for early childhood, youth, families, and seniors. And I know that you all had a packet tonight with your council agenda that included the report that the Community Advisory Board made to the Board of Supervisors in October. But just a reminder that this was a tax measure that was passed a year ago, November, and the County Community Advisory Board was appointed in April of 2021. The ballot measure that we voted on said the stated intent of Measure X was to keep Contra Costa Regional Hospital open and staffed, fund community health centers, emergency response, support crucial safety net services, invest in early childhood services, protect vulnerable populations, and for other essential county services. As a group, we came from all over the county, all different backgrounds. It was a very representative group, I felt, of the county. Most of the people who were on the board I had never met before and have not yet ever met them in real life. We had most of our meetings, all of our meetings virtually. So I look forward to encountering one of them on the street someday. But we embraced a strong vision statement and strong operating principles. Our vision statement was Contra Costa County will have the necessary funds to invest in and sustain a robust system of care and the social and public services necessary to support a vibrant community and ensure that all county residents have equitable opportunities to thrive. And we really did look at equity as an important underpinning of a lot of our recommendations and a lot of our work. And one of the first things we did was make sure that we had language access as part of our inclusion message. And so at every meeting, we had Spanish language interpreters as well as American Sign Language interpreters. And all of our meetings were recorded in both Spanish and in English. So people had access to those meetings. And so we were appointed in April. There were 17 of us. Each supervisory district had 2 appointees and an alternate, and there were 10 at-large members with 7 alternates in the at-large group. So there were 27 of us who would routinely and regularly show up for meetings. And it was a very committed, very dedicated group of people because we met weekly and I'm preaching to the choir because you also meet regularly and have long meetings, but it was unexpected for us to be meeting for such a long period of time. Some of our meetings would start at 5 o'clock, as does yours, and many of them went to 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So it was an important process and one that we all took very seriously. We listened to testimony, thoughtful and compelling testimony from county staff, from community-based organizations, and community members describing the profound needs for funding that they had identified throughout the county. We heard from many people who were impacted emotionally and economically by the pandemic. And we considered lots of hours and hours. I think someone said today it was 1,000 hours of testimony. I don't think it was quite that much. I did listen to the whole Board of Supervisors meeting today, and I'll share some of that with you tonight. When we finished with our taking testimony about what the needs were in the county, and they were very, very widespread and significant, we met as a group. We had about 117 programs that had been presented to us requesting funding totaling $350 million. we were told we had a budget of about 110 million is what the sales tax, the half-cent sales tax that you passed when we voted for Measure X a year ago, November. Out of those 117 programs, we recommended 43 to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. And we did it through a process of discussion as well as polling, and took the top 43 that we as a community advisory board agreed were the major things that should be funded. We made our proposal 27, I think 25 of us voted on the proposals to go to the supervisors, and it was a unanimous vote. I couldn't get 25 people today to agree on what the weather was. So to have 25 of us from, as I say, diverse backgrounds to agree on what we thought were the highest priorities for this county was pretty astounding. And it was the first time I have been part of a public process like that. I know that you all are very much used to it, but it was eye-opening, it was humbling, it was informative, and I'm very, as I said, very grateful to Supervisor Anderson for giving me the opportunity to be part of that group that was so passionate and so committed to doing right by our community and by the county. It was an honor to be with them. So tonight I thought it might, since I know you've all read your packet and you know what Measure X, what we recommended, what the Community Advisory Board recommended to the Board of Supervisors, that perhaps you would like to learn a little bit today about what the Board of Supervisors, what the staff, county staff recommended to the Board of Supervisors, which was as Mayor Morgan mentioned, the subject of an 8-hour meeting today with 82 public comments. And if that will be of interest to you, I have that staff presentation. I'd love to share it with you because there were the focus of today's meeting was there was a disconnect, or in some ways, between what we recommended and what county staff recommended. And I think it's interesting to look at what those differences were. And then I think I've caught what as I was driving to home to take this meeting, I think I do understand how the board voted on it today. So if you will, I'll share the PowerPoint, and I'll just go through it quickly, that was presented to the Board of Supervisors this morning. Okay. Everyone can see that? Okay. So they acknowledge the work that the Community Advisory did. They recommended establishing a tax reserve policy of 25%. They reviewed the Measure X sales tax projections and established a cycle of 3 to 5 years, or wanted to establish a cycle of 3 to 5 years of funding. I'm going to go through kind of some of these technical things, but I wanted to focus on the expenditure plan and what our 5 goals of the Measure X Community Advisory Board were. So our program, we had 5 goals. One was mental well-being, and our goal was we strive to be a community that supports the mental and behavioral health and well-being of all residents through prevention, crisis response services, intersectional supports, and innovative cross-sector approaches. Our second goal was equity in action. We strive to be a community that prioritizes equity and removes structural barriers that cause inequities and poverty so all residents can thrive. And our third goal was we want to be a healthy community. We strive to be a community in which all residents have access to affordable, timely, culturally responsive healthcare, adequate housing, high quality childcare, nutritious food, all of which have become more urgent as we address the ravages of the pandemic. So we heard a lot, as I said, from people who were severely impacted by the pandemic. Our fourth goal was intergenerational thriving. We want to be a community that intentionally strengthens and provides support for all residents and for family members of all generations, including children, youth, and older adults. We heard from seniors who don't have access to transportation, have a difficult time getting to doctor's appointments. We heard from childcare providers who can't find people to hire to take care of our children. It's a wide range of problems. And our fifth goal is to be a welcoming and safe community where all residents feel safe and welcome and can receive emergency help when they need it. So those were our 5 goals. And under each goal, we acknowledged and we came up with programs that met those goals. So I'm going to shift right now to another PowerPoint, if you'll bear with me. Well, I'll go through this one first because this is what the county recommended. On our mental well-being, they recommended funding an expansion of the psych emergency services at the County Regional Medical Center. That was not on our original list, but county staff recommended that. They also recommended funding the Contra Costa Community Crisis Initiative, anyone, anywhere, anytime, which is, many of you have probably become familiar with that, as the Miles Hall Crisis Center. So that will be funded, and that is an important project that I know that Town Manager Calabrigo is very involved with and engaged with, that in which city managers work with county to develop a response where people who are in mental health emergency have access to mental health support anywhere, anytime in the county. The county staff also recommended leveraging some funding for children's mental health services. This is not exactly what Measure X CAB recommended, but it's certainly needed. And then the one that I know that many of you are familiar with is our San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District, their behavioral health crisis response, the pilot program that San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District is doing in conjunction and partnership with the city of San Ramon, where they will have EMTs and paramedics be first responders on nonviolent mental health calls. Everyone is looking at that pilot program with great interest and hope for it to have much success so that it can be expanded throughout the county. This is some of the details on these programs that I just mentioned: the Regional Medical Center, psychiatric emergency expansion. If any of you have been to psych emergency, you know that this is desperately needed, that this is space that needs to be warm and welcoming, and it's not adequate for the role that it plays in our community. This is the A3, and this has been in the works for a while, and this is where the Miles Hall Community Crisis Hub was launched in August of 2021. So we're recommending that Measure X funded to get it going, to establish the dispatch center, to start looking at what they need to get this up and running. And the ongoing support will be able to have us build places or have places where people can be brought that aren't the county hospital, like sobering centers and respite centers. So that's all part of that initiative, which I think is very transformative and will make a profound difference in the life of those who deal with serious mental illness. This is the one-time funding from this early and periodic screening for children. This was not something that was presented to the Community Advisory Board, so I don't have a lot of familiarity with it, but it seems to make sense from what I have learned about it since this report came out. This is the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District information about their non-police response to mental health emergencies. And then our second goal was equity in action. And these programs, the Innovation Fund, Racial Equity, and Office of Racial Equity, Social Justice, and the Arts and Culture Program were all recommended by Measure X. So there are no new new things on this list. There are some things that were left off, but not new. The language access equity measure for Measure X meetings and Measure X needs assessment report writing. Those are administrative things that we need to, that Measure X committee needs as part of doing their work. So the Innovation Fund is I think a kind of an interesting model. So what we suggested was that we put aside $2 million to set up funding opportunities for pilot programs and innovative projects. One of their goals with our Measure X committee was to look for transformational projects, that we didn't want to necessarily just be doing the same thing and filling some gaps. We wanted to really look at different ways of addressing problems. So, and we heard compelling testimony from churches and small nonprofits that don't have a staff to write a huge grant to the county for a request for a proposal. So this hopefully will allow the county to be more nimble in responding to people who are on the ground actually doing the work. So we're very optimistic that there might be some great ideas that come through this Innovation Fund. And many of you may know that the county established an Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, and they have been doing some preliminary work on establishing that office. As a matter of fact, last night we had a listening session in Supervisor Anderson's district about this Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, and we focused our listening session on mental health, student mental health, and we had NAMI there, Discovery Counseling Center was partnering on this, Supervisor Anderson's office. We had Superintendent Lynn Mackey from County Office of Education join us, as well as many community members, school board members, and school superintendents, talking about how an Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice could help inform decisions around mental health for children to ensure equity for all children. So we're happy to see that county staff recommended funding that office, and that will be an ongoing funding source for Measure X, I believe. This is also an interesting one. We allocated $250,000, or we recommended funding arts and culture programs. Contra Costa County currently ranks last of all Bay Area counties in arts funding, and has just one part-time person who works on the arts. So this one, I think, is really important. It sets up some funding for support staff as well as district public art programs and new programs. They also have told us that they think that with some funding from the county, they'll be able to leverage this money and get other grants. And I really thought this was very important because I see the benefit of the arts in many ways, but particularly for children and their mental health, to be able to express themselves through the arts, whether it's theater or music or drawing or painting. It's a very healthy way for children to deal with some of the difficult things that they might have to face. And again, this is the language access, the ability to have American Sign Language interpreters and Spanish interpreters at all of our meetings, which we thought was extremely important. And every year we have to do a new needs assessment of what what is needed in terms of Measure X funding. So this will allow us to bring in a writer who can help us with that process. Our third goal, the Healthy Communities goal, these are the program areas that the county recommended. We did not specifically call out funding for regional medical center, but we knew that they needed to backfill the budget, and we left it open to county staff. So that $40,000 is to backfill the Contra Costa Regional Medical Center build budget. The next four items.
Sorry, that's 40 million, isn't it?
40, I'm sorry, yes, yeah, thank
big
you,
difference.
Noel. Thank you for pointing that out. I was looking at the 40,000 square foot expansion. I was going ahead of myself, but 40 million, exactly, 40 million to backfill the hospital budget. These capital projects, a medical clinic an office complex, a new public health lab, a new parking structure at the Regional Medical Center, and interventional radiology were not recommended by the Community Advisory Board. They were made, those recommendations were made in passing, except for the public health lab. We did have a presentation on that. And although everyone felt it was of great value, in dealing with the fallout from the pandemic, we thought that we could look at that in another funding year. So those 4 items were new to us, they were not on our list. Today, the Board of Supervisors voted to have those 4 capital improvements be put on a separate, they took them off this list and put them in a separate discussion bucket. So I think they're going to be discussing those and getting more information about those and sharing what that looks like with the community, with our Community Advisory Board. The other thing that is very significant for the county and is the local housing trust. And I'm going to go down to that because these are the capital projects that I just mentioned. But the local housing trust is, again, kind of like the arts. It's something that other counties have, but Contra Costa has never had. And if the county puts in an investment of $10 million initially, and then they will contribute $12 million annually, they'll be able to leverage that money for a variety of strategies to address homelessness in Contra Costa County. So it's a very exciting proposition. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way on that. But we'll be able to do things like permanent supportive housing. They'll be able to do some units of permanent affordable housing with supportive services. We heard a lot from people with disabilities and the difficulty in finding places to live, including mental health issues. So this is very significant because it does allow the county to access other funding that they were not able to access because they did not have a pool of money available to match funds that came from other sources. So that's a very critical piece of Measure X. Contra Costa Cares was discussed much in today's meeting. I think that the Board of Supervisors took this off the agenda to be discussed, or took the list of off the list to be discussed further. There is a general acknowledgement that Contra Costa Cares is an important program. The recommendation that staff made was that it would just would be no funding for it for the next year or two, and then come in with what is essentially their current funding now that the hospitals had put in and will be needed to be backfilled. So the question on this and what the controversy around this is that there's a need to expand this program, and that was not funded. But there's also discussion about the state picking up some of the services, the primary care services to people not covered by the Affordable Care Act. So that one is going to take some further investigation, but there seems to be a consensus that Contra Costa Cares will be funded. It's just at how much it will be funded. Intergenerational Thriving. These were 3 programs that our Community Advisory Board recommended. County youth centers in East and Central County. One of the things that we looked at as a group was how we prevent crimes. How do we prevent students, children from falling into difficult situations? And the idea with this is that we wanted to put some significant funding into prevention work. And county youth centers in East and Central County will mirror what goes on in West County through the RISE Center, which is a vibrant support for young people in Richmond. And we're hoping to replicate that in East and Central County. This also part of this this program area was accessible transportation strategic plan. They have a strategic plan. Now they want to look at how they can implement it. So this is a first step in developing some more viable transportation opportunities for particularly seniors or people with disabilities. And there's also a master plan for aging, again, that needs to have looked at finishing the master plan as well as implementing what the suggestions and programs are for that master plan. And this is a little bit more about the youth centers in East and Central County. So that they're really looking at what this will cost and what the long-term ramifications will be of this.
Excuse me, Kathy, can I ask
Sure.
just a clarifying
Of
question?
course, I'm sorry. Yes, interrupted any time.
No, just as you're presenting, this is wonderful information. What I'm not clear on, I know what the recommendations were in those, but did they pass this today? Did they go with it?
Yes, so they passed most of it today. So that's what I'm calling out what I think was not passed. I was
Okay, I wasn't clear. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
So these three things were all passed. So the strategic plan for transportation, the master plan for aging, and the youth centers in East and Central County. And it was an interesting process today because they needed a 4-1 vote because there was allocation of funding associated with this. So several of the items that, and I'll get to those in a minute, that were somewhat controversial, were very controversial, had a 3-2 vote on them, but they needed a 4-1. So some of them are going back for additional studies. So I'll get to that in a minute. So this is actually where the controversies came in. So it's welcoming and safe community. The Measure X committee recommended supporting additional rebuilding and reopening fire stations. A lot were in East County, one in Pinole. They supported wildland fuel mitigation, and so these 4 things were definitely all part of our recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. We did not recommend, I'm going to skip the next 2 for a minute and come back to them. We did not recommend climate sustainability, climate equity, and resilience investment, not because we didn't think they were important, but because of the pandemic, we thought there were more pressing needs. So in our polling, these were kind of middle of the pack. They didn't quite make the recommendation list, but I don't think anyone in the group thought that they weren't important or shouldn't be funded at some time. We also supported community-based restorative justice programs. What we did not have on our list, and which was part of the controversy today, was the sheriff's request for increased patrols in East County, and I'll pull that up here. These are all reopening fire stations, so wildland fire mitigation and fuel reduction, the Pinole Fire Department, and then this is, and I have no idea why it's in black, but the unincorporated patrol decreased response time. So the staff was proposing a $6 million allocation to increase the numbers of patrols in East County. And this is where it became controversial, because the sheriff did present this proposal to the Measure X committee, and part of his other part of the proposal was body cams and in-car cameras. That he presented both of those proposals to Measure X, and the committee considered them. But as I mentioned before, they wanted the focus to be more on prevention work rather than enforcement. So both of these requests fell to the bottom of our polling. So it was somewhat of a surprise to the community and to the advisory board members to see them on the staff's recommendation list. But today, the Board of Supervisors did not vote to support these. They took them off the list for further discussion. So these are not on the approved, what was funded today. The climate sustainability, these had the support of the Board of Supervisors today, and they all passed. So, and the illegal dumping initiative, we did not, the Community Advisory Board did not have this on their list, but the Board of Supervisors approved it today. And again, this is an administrative part of the having the tax and getting consulting services on what the data will actually be. And then I'm going to shift here, if I can, to just give you, and also you can ask me any questions. I don't know I have all the answers, but it was certainly interesting to hear the discussion today and to see what the Board of Supervisors said. There are several, sorry, I'm going to try and find this. Several things that the board wanted, that the Community Advisory Board thought very strongly about. Here.
Kathy, we're going to go ahead and wait till your end of your presentation to bring it back and open it up for questions.
Okay.
That way we don't interrupt you during the presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm going to pull this. Okay. Can you see this next slide deck that I just?
Yes.
Okay. So I know that I should be able to do this so you can see it as a but anyway, so this is, I just juxtapositioned county staff's recommendation with the Community Advisory Board's Measure X recommendation. So these, one of the things that we recommended, so what is in red was something that we had not been presented to us in any formal way. So that's what's in red. What is in white is essentially what the Board of Supervisors, what was in the staff report, what was in our CAB report, and these things the Board of Supervisors supported today. The early childhood mental health services, we called it out. We're hoping that, as I had mentioned earlier, this leverage fund for children's mental health services, we didn't see a presentation on that. I'm hoping that covers early childhood mental health services. But also what is in yellow is what was on our list and that was not funded or not recommended by staff. So we asked for community-based mental health, particularly for at-risk populations. We asked for substance abuse treatment, community-based substance abuse treatment. We asked for mental health support for our AAPI community, as well as our LGBTQ+ community. So those were items that county staff in their recommendations to the Board of Supervisors did not include. Our second goal, equity in action, the Innovation Fund and Racial Equity and Social Justice Office, the Arts and Cultural Programs, those were all ones that we recommended, were all on the county's list. The ones in orange were the administrative ones that we agreed all should be there. The ones in yellow did not, as I said, did not make the county list, including an East County Community-Based Equity Center, Stand Together Contra Costa, which would help on removal of removal defense when people are being evicted. It provides social services, and then the other thing was immigration legal services, people who are here and need legal help. We wanted to fund some of that. We also wanted community-based asylum support for the LGBTQ+ community and other immigrant groups. So those things fell off the list. On our healthy community, we knew that the county hospital would need to be, their budget needed to be backfilled. We never came up with an amount, but we acknowledge that. So that's on the list. These four in red are those capital improvements that the Board of Supervisors took off today to give, so that they, and I think the Community Advisory Board, could have a better understanding of what those what the needs were and how those capital projects would unfold. The local trust fund in white was supported. Contra Costa Cares I have in green because they had it on the list, but we were urging them to have additional funding. And these are the things that were not funded: tenant legal services and support, subsidized childcare, youth and young adult permanent housing subsidies, food distribution, and training and employment services. Those were not funded. The one that I feel most strongly about right now is the subsidized childcare. As I mentioned, that is an acute need all throughout the county, including right here in Danville with Kids County country. It is so difficult to get childcare workers that there has to be a new way of looking at it, and we have to figure out ways to subsidize childcare. So I'm hoping, I think today at the Board of Supervisors meeting, they did talk about childcare, and I think that is one of the ones that they will be looking at more closely. One of the things that they did do was the recommendation from county staff was to have a 25% reserve. The board agreed that it should only be a 20% reserve. So that freed up $6 million, and there was another $6 million that hadn't been allocated. So they have an additional $12 million, and I'm hoping that some of that goes to subsidized childcare, because that is a need throughout the whole county. Intergenerational thriving, the ones in white were what we had on our list. The ones in yellow were on our list, but fell off the list from county staff. We knew we weren't going to get everything, but some of the things that did come off the list were disappointed. Looking at restorative justice, that should be in white because that did make the list also. So let me change that. And then the welcoming and safe community, the fire district, the fire concerns and issues were funded by the board today. As I said, the sheriff's requests were put on hold. Climate and sustainability was not on our list, but was funded today, as well as illegal dumping. These are the ones that didn't get funded today. Public defender front end advocacy teams, I think the board is going to look at that again, because that there seemed to be some support for that, as well as reentry support services, employment abuse prevention and support. That was another one that the board was talking about today that they wanted help with, as well as they want, not on our list nor on the county list, was navigators who can help people access county services. So I think that is, I think, all I have to share with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the Measure X process.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Really appreciate that. Newell?
Kathy, thank you. And thanks for, as the mayor said, all the hours that you put in. Have you done the math? It is based on everything they approved today. Is there additional funds that are unallocated that are still available for this next round? I wasn't quite clear on that.
Yeah, so and there are kind of some nuances here. So there was $80 million worth of capital improvements that they are making to the hospital. So it's like a year and a half of funding. So there's more money in this bucket right now than there has been, than there will be going forward. But yes, the unallocated money is about $12 million.
So that's it.
So they decrease what their the reserves would be, as well as I think there was $6 million that they hadn't funded.
And when will they take that last roundup at their next meeting, or?
So I think they're going to send it to Finance Committee. And also I think they're going to come back to the Community Advisory Board and ask for community input too. I wasn't quite clear. That was the end of the meeting. I think they were talking about their process.
Yeah. Okay,
But,
great.
but the
Thank
good
you
news
so
is
much.
that there was a lot that the Community Advisory Board recommended, that the staff also recommended, and that the board approved today. So this is a significant amount of funding that's going to go to people who are having a really difficult time. And mental health is definitely at the top of everyone's list.
That's great. Thank you for that advocacy.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Dave?
Yeah, Kathy, great presentation, and more importantly, what you do for our community, especially in this area post-COVID. And I think this is the right investment for the longer term as we address how we protect the safety of our community. But a couple of questions, and I want to highlight first that it's so important that we invest in the mental health of our youth. I think the data is starting to come out now that that the impact of COVID has really disrupted, I think, negatively our student behavior and emotional functioning. And some early data is that 22 to 43% of children and adolescents are reporting depression, 18 to 30% are reporting anxiety, 31% are reporting anxiety and depression. And we just don't know what all that means and what will be the outcome of some of the early studies, and more importantly, some of the symptoms that are surfacing today. And I think it's important for our county to get really in front of this and make sure that we're investing and developing a foundation to proactively avoid some of I call it the effects of what COVID is impacting our youth population. So I hope through all of this that we don't lose perspective that our youth is very important, that we truly do need to invest in them, not only in the short term, but also in the long term as well.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that the Board of Supervisors was on that page today. And as I said, we had a listening session last night with the County Superintendent of Schools, and she's just has received some funding from a grant, $6 million funding to really look at how our schools can be even more supportive of mental health. So I very much encourage, there's a lot of positive action being going through this whole county. So it's great.
Thank you.
Karen?
Okay, thank you, Kathy, very much for the time you've put into this, because you have a great deal of background you brought to it. So I can appreciate how much you were part of these conversations. I wanted to comment on two things. One is that physical activity is critical for the kids in terms of them having mental health. And I just saw this with my team of 18 girls on the soccer team, 7th and 8th graders. And they came back after COVID, not ready to run for the most part. And it affected very much their socialization skills and how much they interacted with each other. And this was a team that showed up every practice and every game. So, great set of kids, but really feeling the impact of not having that part. So I just want to make sure that was a heavy part of what mental health means, is that you also physically are away from your phone and you physically are able to get back the way we used to be, so to speak. For kids, that's a big development time. Secondly was the police. I was a little confused, and maybe you can answer this one. That it sounded like they backed off on some of the areas that the police departments had been saying that they needed. How does it affect us in Danville? And is this a further discussion?
I don't think it may have an effect in Danville, but Danville already funds body cams for Danville police. So that would be the only impact I think it would have for areas that don't have body cams already funded. But
sorry, Kathy, then were there discussions that were different on what they wanted to see? I just didn't hear it being a priority, what the police needs were.
It was not. I mean, in the community advisory board meetings, it was not a high priority. It was felt that there were other more pressing COVID related needs that needed to be funded first. And so that was put at the bottom of the list. But
sorry, so as the fourth year of being the safest California city and having seen some violence in our city this year, I can't imagine that it would fall anywhere in Danville lower than where it is, because I think all these other things that are healthy happen because you're safe doing them. And we just heard Zay's discussion tonight, how when you don't feel safe, everything else that you're involved in falls apart too. So just my comments, because I think you made it pretty clear this committee is probably not dismissed. You're probably going to come back and give more feedback. So thank you.
No, thank you, Karen. And for the specific request from the sheriff was for East County patrols, not for patrols anywhere else. Patrols.
Yeah,
Thank you.
none of the sheriff's requests would have impacted Danville.
Yeah, that was an aside, the Danville part. My concern was wider for the county. If you don't feel safe, these other things don't take place, so.
Robert?
Kathy, once again, this is absolutely incredible. I appreciate your leadership in the community and all the good work you've put in this. We had a fairly significant presentation on our last council meeting on November 2nd, and it looked like about a 60-page document that sort of describes everything that you pulled together tonight to make it a little bit easier to understand. But just some background here. Were you able to come up with all these categories of important items before the experts spoke on this, or did you identify the 117 categories and then had experts come in?
No, we had broad categories of concern, of interest, like healthcare, safety net, homelessness, justice. So we identified, and a lot of it was based on the language of the ballot measure. I mean, things were called out like emergency services, fire services, the hospital. We knew mental health needed to be addressed. So we had, I think, 12 different topic areas, and then different, and childcare obviously was a big one. And then we brought in experts who spoke to what the specific needs were in each of those subject areas. And that's how we came up with the 175 programs that we recommend, that were presented to us.
Yeah, so it makes sense. Now, it looks like on this attachment C, I see the 117 categories, and they go from high priority down to, some zeros.
Right.
So did you just take the top? It looks like you took 45 on my report, but you mentioned 43. You just took the top 43.
Exactly. Some of them I think we've kind of put together, so that's why it may look, the number might look differently. Yeah, so we did. We took our polls and then cut it off at, I think it had to have more than 12 first place votes or 13 first place votes.
Yeah, it looks like you stopped at the 13th, and then the 12 weren't selected. But look, I can't even imagine how many hours you put into this, just trying to understand the complexity of each one of these categories. So, I mean, thank you for taking the time to do this, and please pass along to your committee what a wonderful job they've done here to put together a very complicated subject matter and sort of made it a little bit easier to understand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. As I said, it was really a privilege to work with so many dedicated people from across the county, and to have us come to consensus on how we wanted to best support the most vulnerable among us was pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, and I noticed that mental behavioral health was number 1, and early childhood services was number 2 on this particular list. So you really hit the categories that are the most important to this community. And once again, thank you. This is really, really, really well done.
Thank you.
Kathy, I have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind. So some of the things that were mentioned as well was the money that's allocated for a specific type of ambulance or vehicle with, I'm assuming, obviously, a trained staff. Is that ambulance, are those ambulances going to be, where are they going to be? Are they going to be with the fire protection district? Are they going to be easily accessible to our area? And are they going to look just like a regular ambulance? I mean, what do you see for that?
So are you talking about the Community Crisis Initiative?
Right.
So I think that you won't see anything different in the San Ramon Valley in that our San Ramon, if the pilot program gets expanded, I mean, I'm just using that as a hypothetical, that you'll still have fire coming to for mental health. You'll have fire coming to mental health responses. So it won't be, I don't think it will be much different down here. Now, what it will look like for the countywide crisis initiative, I'm not sure what the details of that will look like. So I don't think they know yet. I think it's still very much a work in progress.
Yeah, I'd really like to see them work with the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District and what they've got going, because we definitely could use it, not just up in East County and West County, but down here as well. I mean, we're all
Absolutely.
just,
Yeah.
it's kind of widespread
And
with
I
that.
think that's the intention with the Community Advisory Board funding the pilot program, was that it resonated with our board and wanted to make it work to see if it could be extended throughout the county.
Which would be great. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I'd really love to see that go through. And then you were talking about the supportive housing and the permanent housing. Where are
Yeah.
they looking at putting that? I didn't see a location.
I think that there are some proposals. There's one proposal in Richmond that was on the list, but I don't think we did not see any specific housing projects that were brought to us. What we were looking at was getting a pool of money that then could be accessed by nonprofits who are building housing, affordable housing, and then they would be able to leverage more money. So it was more about setting up the trust fund that would enable building to happen, whether it's the tiny homes or a conversion of a hotel to affordable housing. We didn't see any specific projects. It was just giving the people who are working on those things access to funding.
Which is great. Yeah, and that's what needs to happen. I mean, otherwise it's never going to happen, right?
Exactly.
So 'cause they're going to want to build, at market rate housing and not for those particular reasons. So
Exactly right.
yeah.
And I think
So-
and it's like the arts and culture. It's like we were the only county that didn't have a housing trust fund. So it
Yeah.
became.
Yeah, and the Lesher does the on Broadway. They do a lot of different things to try to support bringing kids to the arts and all that. And it makes such a difference. They have such a great track record with that. To reach out to them to see what their success rate is would definitely behoove them, because it's a great program for these children that have never been able to perform or go on a stage or see the Nutcracker Suite, which we all take our children to. So the other thing was, there's been a lot of highway and freeway type of shootings, which I don't just attest that to people driving down the street, but sometimes it's just mental illness in general, and so when the sheriff comes and says he wants increased patrol and all of that, sometimes that would help as well. I definitely would like to see some of those monies going toward that, because in those particular areas, people are afraid to drive on freeways and that type of thing. So to make sure that we're still taking a look at that, I think is important, because from the sheriff's perspective, it is the county areas that they're concerned about, and making sure they have the funding. And last but not least, I think is the subsidized childcare definitely has, I raise a flag way high for that, because in order to get people back in the workforce, you've got to be able to have children taken care of as well and have a place to go. And that is a big plus if you have something like that. So, I just want to thank you. I know it was a really long meeting. We got Karen with her hand up, so I'll go ahead and conclude it after Karen asks her question.
I just wanted to add on to your childcare comment.
Okay.
Morgan, women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic just because of childcare, that many women have dropped out of the workforce because
Yes.
they can't afford childcare. So the economic rippling effects are profound.
Absolutely. And it's not just been that way with COVID. It's been that way in general for many, for forever. It's been like that, because you have single parents that are trying to make ends meet, and childcare is definitely a very high priced item. And they also want to have their children make sure that they're safe and that they're in a safe environment. And, Kids Country and those type of things provide that. So definitely would like to see that money goes toward that as well. Karen? We've got you on mute. We're all doing the rookie thing tonight. I think Newell mentioned
Go ahead,
the rookie.
Newell. Shoot me. I'm sorry. He's gonna say, no, Karen, that's a rookie thing. Yes, just like you said, Renee, I apologize. So I just wanted to say that I think that like too many laws that go to Sacramento, things have been done backwards, in my opinion here. What you've done is what should have been done before it went on the ballot. We should have known where these funds were going, and the work that your committee has put on is going to give people that kind of a surety. and where it is, and it touched the entire county. 27-person committee is awesome. So I appreciate what you have done. I think it should have been done before it went on the ballot. And then we would maybe even be steps forward here on this COVID recovery. But thank you very much.
You're welcome, Karen. There was a needs assessment done before it went on the ballot, but it wasn't to the level of detail that
No, it wasn't.
it was more general.
Well, once again, we appreciate you being here after a long day of listening to testimony and people speaking to this measure. We definitely appreciate your volunteering and so far, all the other things that you do for our community as well. So thank you for bringing the awareness to us, letting us know what we are looking at as far as funding, what we have, the challenges moving forward, but more so, thank you for representing Danville as well as you do, Kathy. We so appreciate all that you do for us.
No, thank you, Renee. I was delighted that I can bring you news hot off the press that you're hearing it first, what the Board of Supervisors decided today. So
absolutely, and I was able to listen to most of it, but then I had meetings as well, so it was very long, very long. So
yeah.
Well, thank you again, Kathy.
You're welcome.
And,
thank you for having me tonight.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
All right.
Great,
Good night.
Kathy. Thank you.
Okay, and now moving on for more communication this evening, we have item 6.2, which is our Recycle Smart presentation by Judith Silver, the Senior Waste Prevention and Recycling Manager. And Judith, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. I think we're into evening now.
Yes, something like that.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. I'm hoping you're seeing this.
Yeah, would you like to share it completely? I think you have, can you share the whole screen? We have, yeah, because we have your sidebar there. If not, it's okay. Just
here, no, I'm going to start it here. How's that?
Okay.
Well, good evening. Good evening, Mayor Morgan and Vice Mayor Arnerich and the rest of the council. It's really a pleasure to be here. You guys have done a lot of appreciating so far, and I just want to appreciate all that you are doing. Being here, it's quite a process. We appreciate the invitation to be here and to present to your council. I'm here to talk to you this evening about SB 1383. I'm Judith Silver. I've been with Recycle Smart for about 1.5 years, and I want to tell you today a little bit about the law and how the JPA is assisting Danville satisfy the regulation's many requirements. So 1383 is the most significant waste reduction mandate to be adopted in California. It was adopted in 2016. The idea is to reduce disposal and have specific goals for that. 75% reduction by 2025 from the 2014 level, and to increase food donation as well. As you can see from the slide, food waste alone represents 18% of what's thrown away in California. And focusing on getting organics out of the landfill makes sense, both from a waste diversion perspective and also from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective. The law itself is quite prescriptive. I want to convey that in most areas, Recycle Smart and therefore Danville is already compliant. The cornerstone of the law says that generators, and by generators, I mean everybody, there's really no getting out of participating here. So multifamily tenants, commercial businesses, residents, students, everybody must have a program in place to separate organics from landfill. And basically, we already have that. We'll be bringing our townhomes on at the beginning of next year. And not only do we have that, but we have the right cart colors, which is apparently, this is important in the law. And we have that already paid for. The cost of the 3-cart system is in our rate base already. It's being paid for through our current rate situation, which compared to many jurisdictions in California, they have a much steeper learning curve, steeper curve to come up in order to be in implementation and compliance with the law. So I'll dig into more aspects of the law as we progress here. But that said, I just want to do this. I'm sorry, I'm off slide here. Okay, here we are. So that said, there are a few areas of the law that do rest with each member agency and are not going to be fulfilled by the by Recycle Smart directly. And you'll be hearing from Diane later in your meeting about your water efficient landscape ordinance and about the organic waste procurement policy, which are both components of the law, which will be handled by each individual member agency. And I want to call out the organic waste procurement obligation, which seems to be the very stressful piece for our individual member agencies. And staff at Recycle Smart have been working hard to assist the member agencies with this. For example, we've been able to work with East Bay Mud to help meet about 10% of Danville's procurement obligation. And I don't have details to share yet, but our executive director has been working quite hard on a scheme that will help meet the 100% of every member agency's procurement obligation. And we'll have more information to share on that in the next few weeks, but that's an exciting development, which I'm very pleased to share. In terms of SB 1383, the law itself, almost every aspect of the law goes into effect January 1 of 2022. And as I said, we are largely in compliance and we're in good shape. One of the big pieces that we've been working on is the ordinance that we are obliged to pass, the mandatory organic waste disposal reduction ordinance. Our version of this ordinance used very closely to the state model. And we will have our second reading of that ordinance at our December 9 board meeting. And based on guidance from our agency legal counsel, Danville does not need to adopt this ordinance by reference. So just to sort of step back for a moment, the plan for the next few years, we adopt the ordinance, and then we continue to push to educate all of our generators about how to separate organics and why this is important. In 2024, we will be obliged to issue notices of violation and possibly even fines, though never to the residents. And since our service area is already used to having these services, and we will be pushing education outreach over the next few years, we're not expecting much in the way of enforcement come 2024. Thanks to the foresight of the Recycle Smart board over the last decade, we are in compliance with our existing collection approach, which, as I said, is already being paid for through our rates and is being executed by our service partners, Republic Services and Mount Diablo Recycling. Just want to call out that we do have the opportunity to issue waivers to some commercial accounts if they generate less than 10 gallons of organics, and that's not very much organics, so there aren't that many businesses who are going to be able to get out of that obligation, but it will bring relief to some businesses. As I mentioned, we're required to do education every year about proper separation of materials and, again, why we are separating these materials. And this includes promoting waste prevention and working with our commercial accounts to give them the tools that they need to educate tenants and employees, because the law compels them to do this education each year. So that includes things like signage and containers for customers and videos to help their tenants and customers understand what they need to do. One of the most interesting aspects of SB 1383 is the obligation for our agency and all jurisdictions in California. And I just want to say, like, one of the things that's nice about this being a state law is that this is true everywhere, and this will be happening everywhere. So it's kind of standardizing some of the aspects of waste prevention and recycling, which have all been a little bit all over the place in different communities. So everyone's going to be on a more level playing field, which is really helpful. But one of the things I wanted to point out is that we're engaging in food rescue And that's a great opportunity to sort of make sure that we're keeping the organics out of the landfill and also, feeding folks who need the food. So we've been hard at work developing relationships in the county over the last few years, most importantly with White Pony Express. We partnered with them on a food rescue grant from CalRecycle, which yielded a $300,000 grant to help them further their work in our service area and throughout the county. The law organizes businesses based on tiers. So if you're, depending on how big you are, you have to participate. So I wanted to show you our your tier 1 and tier 2 businesses in the Danville area. And you can see that the tier 1 businesses are sort of your supermarkets, and would also be food distribution or wholesalers or businesses like that if you had them. And then the tier 2 are more like restaurants and hotels and a lot of schools. And so we welcome your partnership to help educate. And really, we have about 3,000 businesses in our whole service area. So you can see that not that many are actually going to be compelled to participate in food donation, but these are the ones that will, and then hopefully we'll get even more to participate going forward. So obviously, if we eventually have to do notices of violation and potentially some fines, we have to understand who is and who isn't doing a good job of separating their organics. And so in order, the SB 1383 has a whole section that requires us to do annual monitoring, sort of route contamination monitoring, lid flipping, if you will. And then we have this opportunity to provide feedback and education to help give businesses and residents guidance on how to properly separate if we find contamination. And then we're working with a contractor to help develop this protocol for how that route monitoring can go. And then we're going to be testing it in January of 2022. And then we'll be rolling out a full program in the next years and ongoing. And then lastly, we have a mountain of paperwork to share with the state about everything that we're doing. And so this covers all aspects of 1383, including what we are going to need from Danville so that we can turn around and share that information with the state. And we're meeting with all of the member agency staff in early December to kind of come up with the protocols for the information that we need. And we will be beginning that in January 1, 2022. I just want to call out quickly that the state has the right to tell us we're not doing a good job, but it's very unlikely that we will be in any way impacted by that because honestly, our agency is often held as an example of good guidance around waste prevention and organics diversion. And finally, I just wanted to touch on SB 619. Which is, if you're aware, was a law that was passed to give jurisdictions the opportunity to tell CalRecycle that they plan to comply, but they're not quite there, and to allows CalRecycle to come up with a way to waive civil penalties for individual jurisdictions. We do, that's really up to you guys as an agency if you feel you need to do that, but we don't, we could talk about that, but I don't think that you do. And there's a webinar later this week, which all of the member agency staff are aware of, where they're going to be describing that process and how you could go about doing that. So there will be more details on that to follow. So I know this is a lot of information, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have, but that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for the presentation. One thing I did want to remind council is that if we're going to ask questions, if we can kind of make those questions toward Recycle Smart and the garbage end of it, and keep the, anything else that has to do with legislation, if we can ask those in the later time, which would be when we're discussing number 8.2. So are there any questions of Judith? Oh, Newell, sorry, I didn't see you over there.
Judith, thank you for the presentation, and I appreciate you doing it for us, and I know you're doing it for all the other agencies now. Just one little minor correction. On your tier 1 list, you had Draeger Supermarket.
Yes.
That's not actually in the town of Danville.
Oh,
All
no.
the other
So
ones are. It's
thank
in,
you for
it has a
that.
Danville address, but it's not in the town of Danville.
is it
So
unincorporated?
it is.
Mhm.
Perfect. That's great. Diane caught a few of those, but it's hard
Yeah.
for me to always
No,
know.
that's okay.
But
It's hard.
we will remove it.
Yeah, so my question is, and it starts with our biggest concern in Danville, obviously doing the paper and all that. We'll pivot, we'll get it, our purchasing will get set up when we do it. We don't use as much paper as we used to. But it's the taking back all of this recycled organic materials. And when you look at the tonnage that we have to deal with, we can convert all of our needs to 100% of that, and we just make a tiny dent in that. So how are we ever going to comply? And we can't be any different than any other city.
No,
So-
I think that's, I mean, if it were ever true that misery loves company, I think that that's true here. I mean, I think that the entire state is trying to figure out how they're going to comply. And we have really been trying to look at this from many different angles. And as I did mention, our executive director has been hot on the trail of a potential solution. But I don't want to steal his thunder, and I'm really not supposed to say anything more about that. So I'm hoping that hopefully by the close of this calendar year, we can sort of put you at ease on that front. I don't feel comfortable sharing any more details. Joe's clapping at this point. So, but I agree that I feel that even if our scheme doesn't work, which I think it actually will, that there will be some legislation to fix this, because it's just so it doesn't make sense. Having said that,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, but as a board member,
Right.
it makes me nervous.
Yeah,
I don't want to
absolutely.
wait. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I don't want to wait. So get to Renee and I what's happening, what the plan is, so we
Okay.
can wait. We can't wait till next year to do this. Want to
Okay.
know ASAP on that. That's our big concern. The rest of this,
Absolutely.
the rest of this, as you said, we're in great compliance on so many areas. And thank you
Yeah.
and the staff for helping on it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate all that you, as a board member of our agency and other board members, have done to really position us this well, because I wouldn't want to be in an agency. I wouldn't want to not be here right now. This is a good place to be. It's still quite a heavy lift. So,
Karen?
Okay, thank you very much, Judith. I've served on that for many, many years also. And Renee and Newell are doing a great job. And you're right, we're in a position we wouldn't have been in had we not been aware of scheduling our contracts to start meeting these requirements. Well, meeting these needs for how we're taking care of things. But right now, I'm going to go back to a mountain of paperwork to report to the staff, because this is going to pervade this and the next two items as well. So how much do you think that we are going to incur for the cost for the record keeping, and how much of it's going to be paid by the people who passed these laws?
yeah, I don't think any of the record keeping is going to be paid for by the state, although there is actually I was on a webinar this morning that there is a kind of a block grant that will be available for implementation. But right now, the only guarantee is about $20,000 per jurisdiction, which might mean that we would get, $100,000 with all of our agencies combined. I'm not sure how they would look at us if they looked at us as one agency or each agency, but that might be an opportunity to help offset some of those costs. So yeah, it is a bit of an administrative lift to do that paperwork and track, your purchases. But I think it's really kind of putting the systems in place. You're not making purchases every day. So I don't think it's going to be, it's basically keeping track of all the recycled paper and all the paper that you purchase for all your needs in the city, as well as the recovered organic.
Well, that was informative. I didn't know about the block grants. And
yes, that was new. That just happened in the last.
It's just that everything seems to be unfunded mandates ever since I was on the school board, so 30 years of unfunded grants, unfunded mandates is disturbing, to put it mildly. And we're very fortunate Recycle Smart's a great agency. It's very small and efficient. CCTA is the same way, very small and efficient. And we have very intelligent people running our town. And yet we seem to have a state that thinks that we have to have everything proscribed down to the T's and I's. And I don't agree with that. So, but the work that you're doing to help us is really great. We appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Well, great. I really appreciate you being here this evening. And if you wouldn't mind, I would love to have the rest of the council, as well as ourselves, receive a copy of your presentation so that we have
Absolutely.
that information as well.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you so much for being here this evening, for
Thank you,
waiting
Mayor.
as long as you had to speak with all of us.
Oh, I learned a
And-
lot. It was great. It was really
Okay,
informative.
great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
Newell and I will see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our public hearings, which is our public comment is also invited to participate in this. And that would be item 7.1, which is to consider introduction of ordinance number 2021-4, repealing the existing chapter 32-80 of the Danville Municipal Code and adding a new chapter 32-80 to the Danville Municipal Code, adopting the California Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. And this presentation will be done by our city attorney, Rob Ewing.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan and members of the council. So Judith kind of hit on a little bit on this item already. So a little history going back into the 80s, the state has adopted a couple of different model landscape and irrigation ordinances. And they're the type of ordinance which we've dealt with elsewhere, where they set the minimum standard. You can adopt a more local stringent, or you can simply comply with theirs. The ordinance in front of you is the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, affectionately known as the MWELO. It was adopted by the state in 2015. We have been applying it since 2015 based on the state mandate, because we didn't have any particular local additions to add to it. But as Judith indicated, as part of 1383, they really want to see that you have formally adopted the ordinance. So that's one reason to do it. The other is that we realized going back through the zoning ordinance that we had a prior version of the state ordinance that we had adopted back in the 80s. And so we want to get, 90s, 1991. We wanted to get rid of that and replace it with the current one, just to avoid any potential confusion for applicants who might be looking through the code. So we've attached to your staff report the ordinance itself. It's adopting the state ordinance by reference, so it's very short. We've attached for your information the entire ordinance, which we're adopting by reference, which is extremely long. And the only thing I would point out in our ordinance, our short 2-pager, is that in order to adopt an ordinance by reference, you have to separately establish what the penalties are for violation of that ordinance. So that's why those penalties are in there. They're the same as they would be for an infraction or an administrative citation, which is $100, $200, and $500, depending on how many times you have violated. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, but we are recommending that you introduce the ordinance, and we would bring it back on December 21st for second reading and adoption.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Are there any questions or on this? Dave, I just saw you kind of click on and off, so no, okay. Karen.
Comment. It's not a question, so you want comments later?
Yeah, let's go ahead, and if there's anybody right now that would like to have questions, we'll go ahead and answer those questions right now. If not, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the public comment, and see if there's anybody in the public that has any comments or questions on this. Marie?
There are no hands raised for this item.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to the council. Karen?
Okay, so this just takes me back to when I'm coming early on the council, and Mike Szymanski and all the comments. We went on that master permit for the stormwater and how it got out of hand and gets more out of hand every year. in terms of our costs and what we're required to do. And it somehow got away from the elected officials and has been taken over by the restrictions and codes that are running both the 7.1 and what's the other one is the 8.2, I guess. So it's a difficult thing to see these costs rise apart from the budget that we're so good about conserving and taking care of. And we'll have that report coming up too soon. So that's my problem with this item and the next item.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I would move that
Motion.
we adopt this as presented tonight. And I agree with Karen, by the way.
Okay, and add that. All right, so we have a first. Do I have a second? Nobody wants to second the item?
Not me.
I'll second it.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll second it.
Yeah. All right, roll call.
Yes, Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Do I have to answer? Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
The ordinance was approved unanimously. It'll return for second reading on December 21st.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I think you can hear the frustration in all of us. So let's go ahead and move on to administrative staff reports. We've got 7.1 is completed. So we have now number 8 on our agenda is 8.1, consider adoption of the resolution number 75-2021, approving the fiscal year 2021 audited annual comprehensive financial report for the town of Danville. And we are joined this evening by Lonnie Ha, our financial director and treasurer. And we will also be hearing from Coley Delaney.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. This evening, the Town Council is considering the fiscal year 2020-21 audited annual comprehensive financial report for the town of Danville, referred to as the ACFA. The Finance Committee met on October 19 to review the preliminary fund balance numbers, and at the November 9 public study session, a complete draft of the ACFA was reviewed in detail by the Town Council. The Town Council will take up formal consideration of the ACFA tonight. Joining us for tonight's council meeting is Coley Delaney, a partner with our independent audit firm, the PUN Group. Coley will present the opinion of the town's fiscal year ended 2021 financial statements and the town's financial status. Before I turn it over to Coley, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to walk you through the process followed by town staff to prepare the ACFA. In March, our auditors worked virtually with town staff to perform their interim audit work. This consists of doing two things: reviewing our internal controls, policies, and procedures, and ensuring that they are all being followed by the town, and reviewing preliminary numbers through the first 8 months of the fiscal year. Once the fiscal year ends on June 30, we follow a process that involves 3 additional steps. We close the books for the fiscal year and complete all financial statements needed for the auditors to perform their work. The auditors review the financials and confirm data with third parties, and we prepare the fund balance numbers and the ACFA itself. PUN Group has now completed its examination and approved the town's financial statements. The ACFA is presented in compliance with all applicable standards established by the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, or GASB. Highlights of the town's accomplishments and fiscal activities are presented in the transmitter letter and the management discussion and analysis. Now I'd like to touch on some key highlights. In general fund revenue exceeded final budget revenue by 5.9 million. General fund's expenditure were below budget by 4.3 million. As shown on page 3 of the staff report under general fund balance analysis, the general fund balance at June 30, 2021 was 33.5 million. Total reserved designated fund balance was 25.4 million. This leaves a total unreserved undesignated amount of 8.1 million. Staff and the Finance Committee recommended and the Town Council approved at the study session that $486,220 be transferred to contingency fund, 6.1 million to be transferred to Capital Improvement Program General Purpose Fund to assist with funding of future projects as determined by the Town Council, and 1.5 million to be transferred to operating reserve to increase its balance to 13.8 million from the 12.3 million. If you don't have any questions for me, I will now let Coley present the audit to you.
All right, no questions? Okay. Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the Town Council. As Lonnie mentioned, my name is Coley Delaney. I'm a partner at the Poon Group, and I'm the engagement partner for the audit engagement of the Town of Danville for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. The audit of the town's annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR, was conducted in conformity with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States, as well as government auditing standards. Now, the annual comprehensive financial report is the primary objective source of information that most people are concerned about a government's financial condition look to. Taxpayers are interested in the amount of revenues and expenditures and overall financial health of the town. Investors and bond rating agencies are interested in the ability of the town to meet its debt obligations. And for Town Council, the financial report provides an opportunity to determine compliance with budgetary appropriations, as well as the status of the town's assets and liabilities and the overall financial condition of the town. So presented to you tonight is the annual comprehensive financial report that covers the period from July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. I'd like to provide you, the Town Council, and citizens a brief overview of the financial statements. So for these financial statements, the town goes above and beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles for a basic financial statement, and the town participated in the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Program. In order to achieve the award, the town is required to prepare its financial statements with additional information in the spirit of transparency and full disclosure. So I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the town for receiving that award for its 2020 financial statements, and we also expect that the 2021 report will receive the award as well. The financial statement, or the financial section of the annual comprehensive financial report is prepared in accordance with the GASB statement number 34 model, which includes management's discussion and analysis. This is where management provides an overview of the year's operations and how the town performed financially. The government-wide financial statements are the consolidated financial statements of the town and are reported using the economic resources measurement focus and the full accrual basis of accounting. The fiduciary financial statements include the statement of fiduciary net position and the statement of changes in fiduciary net position, and these statements include the activities in which the town holds assets in a fiduciary or custodial capacity for others. Included in these financial statements is the successor agency private purpose trust fund and the deposits custodial fund. For the fund financial statements, the governmental fund financial statements are the traditional funds of the town and are reported using the current financial resource measurement focus and the modified accrual basis of accounting. These financial statements include the town's general fund. There's also notes to the basic financial statements, which are explanatory notes that are discussions of further detail of items that are included in the financial statements. Also included is required supplementary information, which provides additional information about budget to actuals for the general fund, the lighting and landscaping district special revenue fund, and the regional traffic impact fee special revenue fund, as well as the information on the modified approach that the town uses for valuing infrastructure assets. The financial section also includes supplementary information, which provides what we call the combining statements of the non-major individual funds and additional budget to actual statements. The responsibilities for these financial statements are broken down into auditors' responsibilities as well as management's responsibilities. As far as for me and my firm, for the auditor's responsibilities, our responsibilities are to express opinions about whether the financial statements are prepared by management with your oversight are fairly presented in all material respects in conformity with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. We are responsible for applying limited procedures in accordance with AICPA generally accepted auditing standards to the required supplementary information. We're also responsible for considering internal controls over financial reporting and communicating significant matters related to the audit that are relevant to your responsibilities in overseeing the financial reporting process. We also are responsible for performing tests of the town's compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. As far as management is concerned, management is responsible for the financial statements and all accompanying information, as well as all representations contained therein. Management is responsible for establishing and maintaining effective internal controls, including evaluating and monitoring ongoing activities. Management is also responsible for making all financial records and related information available to the auditors, and for the accuracy and completeness of that information. They are responsible for adjusting the financial statements to correct material misstatements. And lastly, management is responsible for the design and implementation of policies, procedures, and internal controls put in place to prevent and detect fraud. So here are a few required communications by generally accepted auditing standards. The first one is in relation to our independence as a firm. So we complied with all relevant requirements regarding independence, and that means that both the firm and the individuals in the firm that worked on the town's audit are independent of the town. For significant accounting policies that the town used, the town disclosed all of those significant policies in Note 2 to the financial statements. And this year, the town implemented 3 GASB statements. GASB statement number 84 was called fiduciary activities, which had a minor effect on the town's financial reporting for the year. And then GASB statement number 90, majority equity interest, had no effect on the town's financial reporting. And GASB statement number 98, which the only thing that did was change the name of the report from comprehensive annual financial report to annual comprehensive financial report. And so no real significant effects of implementing new statements this year. There were not a lot of significant estimates included in the financial statements. Fair value on investments is one, and estimating depreciable lives of capital assets was another. Since the town does not have a net pension liability or a net OPEB liability, there were no actuarial estimates included in these financial statements. Important disclosures in these financial statements would be Note 2, which is the summary of significant accounting policies. Note 3 is cash and investments. Note 6 is the details out the loans receivable from the successor agency, and Note 8 includes the town's long-term obligations. Regarding misstatements, there were no uncorrected misstatements reported. To our knowledge, there were no consultations with other accountants regarding the audit, and we encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management, and we did not have any disagreements with management in terms of accounting treatments or audit procedures performed. I was going to talk a bit about some financial highlights, but I know that Lonnie basically already went over a few of those. So I know that we discussed those in our study session last week, but I mean, kind of one of the main takeaways of that is that overall, the town appears to be in good financial health, although we as the town's auditors do not provide an opinion on the town's financial condition. As far as the audit results, unmodified or quote unquote clean opinions were issued for all opinion units. And what that means is that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. Accounting policies were consistently applied, estimates used were reasonable, and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. As far as other results, I mentioned already, we had no disagreements with management, and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were identified in internal control over financial reporting or compliance, and no accounting issues were noted, and no inappropriate activities were noted in the financial statement. So that basically is my presentation. So I'll open it to questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? Newell?
Cool, thank you for the presentation, and we appreciate the previous meeting we had with you to sort of dig deep into this. When you look at how Danville has invested. We developed into the Munis software system, and it sped up, gave our management and our managers much greater access to understand their budgeting and things, and it's really paid off. But from an auditing point of view, as we've added other modules and things to that, is that a hindrance, a barrier, or is there anything in the Munis system that makes it more difficult to do the audits, or any comments in that area?
No, I mean, I would say that so my firm's focus is essentially we are about 90% governmental agencies and special districts and things like that, and Munis is the most popular accounting software that entities using fund financial accounting and the modified accrual basis of accounting and all that that they use. One thing that I would maybe hope that we would be able to implement in the future is that Munis does provide auditors read-only remote access, and so I know that would if we were to implement that piece into the audit, it does two things. One, it lessens the burden on town staff as far as dealing with our audit request, and then two, it allows us to kind of do a little bit more, digging around, where and basically what it does is facilitate. If I'm looking into a certain account and I see a transaction, and I go, oh, I kind of want to go look a little further into that on the other side of that transaction. That would allow us to do that sort of in the moment rather than having to request specific additional items. But we were, that being said, we're not hindered at all.
Great. Well, it's good to hear about that module, and I'm sure with working with our IT department, we can figure out how to make that a safe portal. But it sounds like a good asset. Last question is, and it's one we always ask you: how does Danville compare to other cities in terms of its financial soundness? And I preface this that most of the cities around the Tri-Valley and heading north of us, on a per capita basis, we are the most cost-effective city, or none. But how do we stand in overall, the health, the safety, and the confidence of as a business entity?
And I know that we touched on this a bit in our study session last week, but just the fact that when you look at essentially the bottom line on the governmental activities, and looking at the numbers on the full accrual basis for the town as a whole, the fact that I'm looking at the number here, Denver has $65.8 million of unrestricted net position at the government-wide level, is really good number. I mean, just the fact that it's even positive. We have so many cities that have negative numbers in that unrestricted net position area, and that's mainly due to having to record their net pension liabilities and OPEB liabilities, which the town does not have. So compared to other cities, I think the town of Danville definitely stands out in that regard.
Great, thank you for saying that.
Karen?
Are we in, I wanted to comment particularly on our general fund budget balance analysis as part of this report. I think that it's an outstanding picture of how Danville is different in managing its funds and its money, particularly through the COVID experience this year. I know that Lonnie had a great deal with putting it together, but it's our outstanding town manager who actually allocated all these things that are in our resolution here today, and in particular, the funds going to the contingency fund, which is just the safety measure in my mind, but to the capital improvement projects fund is an incredible change that's going to help our community, everything from roads to parks, etc., and ongoing sinking funds that make our town what it is and give it the character it does for those projects that go on year after year. And finally, for the COVID Reserve Fund, how could it be any more important than what we've seen in the last year and a half, when we've seen our businesses hurt, our residents hurt, but also things that bring us back to Danville. So it means all these activities are occurring in Danville because people don't want to go anywhere else. Not only because Danville's a great place, but because of all the other things that have impacted what we've heard. And so to have a COVID Reserve Fund is really critical. But to have a financial statement that looks like this after what we expected, just huge kudos to all of the staff that made changes in their department budgets, all the way up to Joe, who organized this, and Lonnie, who's reported it to us. So thank you, Coley, for bringing us another clean opinion, even as the rules have changed for GASB. And the title of our report has changed. What you have done is assured us that what we're doing is on the right path, and that as we come back to the capital improvement program, we will have input from all the public and all of the people here as we go forward. And that's the way Danville operates, with great transparency. So thank you for helping us do that.
Did you have a question as well, Karen, or just a comment?
No, that's why I said it was a comment. I'm sorry if I was trying to
okay.
turn it into a question, but I'd rather just compliment everyone that's part of this, including the council. So,
Robert.
Yeah, no, thank you. We say this all the time, and sitting here as a council, you look at Joe Calabrigo and you look at Lonnie Ha and you look at Coley and you think, wow, this report couldn't actually get any better. And part of it's the way we do business in Danville. And like I've said a million times, we just don't spend money that we don't have. We actually save our money for a capital improvement project. We actually put money away for a rainy day. We spend money wisely, and I think Newell mentioned it. One of the most cost-effective cities in California. And when you sit here and you put all that together in a very simple way, this is the report that we have year in and year out, because we don't do business any differently this year versus next year. And Lonnie, thank you for your stewardship in this. It's amazing. Joe, thank you for all your input. We are just an extremely well-run city. And we look at these reports and we think, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine not being in Danville. Coley, I think, touched base on that. There are many cities that would love to have this financial report, in our size. Yeah. So really well done. Coley, thank you for all your good work on this.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure working with the town.
So what I'd like to do is direct the council to questions right now, because I have to open it up to public comment. And although I appreciate all the wonderful comments, I'd really like to see if there's any questions of Lonnie or Coley before I open it up to public comment and questions. Dave, did you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Great.
The question, Coley, is you've got a good line of sight. Are there any anticipated regulatory changes or procedural changes that we need to be aware of and have a perspective and anticipate going forward with our budgeting process that might impact on our current financials standing? Potentially.
I think the big one is, and which I think that you're well aware, and it's a positive, which is going to be the town receiving ARPA funds, so the American Rescue Plan. I know that and I think Lonnie can confirm that if I recall, the town was awarded about $10 million of ARPA funds, and so those will supplement for any lost revenue and things like that. But really, I'd say that's the main one. There is a new GASB pronouncement that we consider to be sort of a big one, which is on how to record leases, which will be in effect next year. And so I'll be working with Lonnie as to how we're going to show that, but that's not going to have any effect on the town's budgeting process.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'd like to go ahead and open up for public comment and give people in the public the opportunity to ask a question and or comment. Marie, is there anybody in the public that would like to address this item?
There are no hands raised for this item, no.
Okay, now we can bring it back to the council to continue with our comments. Newell.
Since David, I asked questions, we should go first. No, Karen summed it up really well. So did Robert. It's always extraordinary because there was a point in time before Joe and others that are sitting here. It was not a rosy report, but we were in extraordinary shape. And when I say that we are the most cost-effective, one of the most cost-effective cities, that you can't just look at other cities at how much they spend a year and divide it by their population and say X. The reason why is you have to take all that unfunded liability, all that debt that they've buried that has to be paid when we essentially have none. And that's really what makes us stand out in extraordinary ways. And the leadership and the management has guided us to a contracting model that has proved time and time again, particularly over the past 27 years, of guiding us through the ups and downs, economic turmoils, pandemics that have really served us well, that completely hampered other cities by their lack of ability to contract for services. So, I am really excited, and I think the Pun Group has just done a great job in always looking, and Lonnie's team has just demonstrated incredible discipline and compliance to being recognized for these annual comprehensive financial reports, as we now call them. I was so used to saying CAFR, but now the C is later, so a CAP for a CAFR. So I would be honored to move that we accept resolution number 75, 2021, approving the fiscal 2021 audited annual comprehensive financial report.
Second.
Okay. I'd like to just add really quick that, who would have thought that a year from last year, we would be sitting here looking at the fact that our property taxes have increased, our sales taxes have increased, and we're sitting in a good financial situation. It's a definite plus, and I thank you, Lonnie, and staff and the Pun Group, as well as obviously, as everybody else has mentioned, Joe and everybody. So thank you so much for that. I mean, the town's conservative investment policy and practices that continue to protect the principle of the town's investment portfolio. And we are all thankful for that. So with that, I have a first and a second, and I need a roll call, please.
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
He said yes by mouthing, but he's playing rookie again like us.
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Resolution 75-2021 was approved unanimously.
Thank you all. And thank you, Lonnie, once again.
Thank you.
Okay, so item 8.2 is to consider adoption of resolution number 76-2021, approving a recovered organic waste product procurement policy as required by SB 1383 and the regulations to implement the policy. And that report this evening will be by Diane Friedman. Welcome, Diane.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Morgan. Good evening, Town Council. I'm here to present the staff report on the recovered organic waste product procurements policy as required under SB 1383. As was noted earlier this evening by Judith Silver from Recycle Smart, this is one of the prescriptive requirements related to SB 1383 that will take effect on January 1st, 2022 that the town is responsible for. SB 1383 requires local jurisdictions adopt procurement policies addressing the purchase of organic recycled materials. The law sets minimum amounts of organic recycled materials which must be acquired and requires detailed tracking and record keeping of all purchases by both the town and by any contractors used by the town. The town is required to procure over 3,500 tons of recycled organic content during the 2022 calendar year. Cal Recycle is the state agency that is charged with overseeing compliance to SB 1383 regulations. Cal Recycle has also prepared a model procurement policy attached to your staff report that contains all the mandatory language in SB 1383, enabling regulations while providing options for each jurisdiction to consider. For the town, this will primarily involve the purchase of mulch, compost, and paper. This, as discussed, is an unfunded mandate that has the potential to generate significant financial impacts for the town. It's dependent upon the cost and amount of materials that are required to be purchased and additional staff time required to procure materials, track usage, and comply with mandated reporting. Additional costs will be quantified further in preparation for the 2022-23 operating budget process. And based on Judith Silver's earlier presentation this evening, perhaps we can be hopeful that Recycle Smart will have procured with us with an early gift this holiday season. I also wanted to provide an update on funding. Judith mentioned block grants that are becoming available, and I am assuming that she is referring to Cal Recycle's administering of a one-time grant program meant to provide aid in the implementation of regulations adopted by Cal Recycle pursuant to SB 1383. This is a non-competitive grant program that will provide funding to local jurisdictions to assist with the implementation of regulation requirements associated with SB 1383. It's referred to as the Circular Economy Package, and there is $60 million in funding allocated. Applications will be released in January. We have forwarded this information. This is something that staff will be looking at with Townsend under our grant writing program. So with that, the staff recommendation is to adopt Resolution 76-2021, approving a recovered organic waste product procurement policy as required by SB 1383 and regulations to implement the policy. And that concludes the staff report, and I will turn it back to you, Mayor Morgan, for questions or comments.
Thank you, Diane. Any questions? Karen.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Exhibit 1. My first question is probably for Diane. It says in there, we're going to comply with state requirements that to procure a specified amount of recovered organic waste amounts. Are those amounts set by us?
No, it is set based on a per capita formula and based on Danville's per capita number, and it's assigned by Cal Recycle. Our procurement goal will be over 3,500 tons, to be exact, 3,512 tons for 2022.
So as I understand it, those 3,500 tons, if we don't meet them, we're still required to purchase them and give them away to someone. It sounds like a gift of public funds. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are required to meet that. And part of the language in the bill is that we can use outside or third-party vendors. We can do mulch or compost giveaways, get very, very creative in meeting those requirements. And again, at the cost to the town.
If we don't meet those requirements, then is it correct that we would be subject to penalties and fines?
Yes, and SB 619 has given the town a reprieve as far as the financial penalties. What we need to do by March 1st is send a letter to Cal Recycle that we intend to comply with the regulations regarding SB 1383 and our procurement requirements. And that will help us as far as any penalties. If we don't show that we have intent to comply with this law, they can come back and make those penalties retroactive. But as of now, we have to show intent to comply.
I'm looking at the paper products now with respect to the requirements there. As I read that, would that take for example, our recreational guide and decide that it has to be all recycled paper with a 30% rules, which is done by many cities around us, but we have a very higher end recreational guide that has outstanding participation, especially as we recover from COVID. And it hasn't been done in that way. And although, of course, a lot of things that go online, we have found in Danville that a lot of people like things on paper, and it probably encourages them to take these classes that help their mental and physical health. And so I see that as a potential problem if the state is going to tell us what kind of paper to use. Is that correct? As I read it, the state is doing so. Is that correct, Diane?
Yes, one of the ways that we can obtain our goal is to use third parties such as our newsletter vendor to meet those requirements and ask them to procure 30% recycled content going forward for the newsletter.
I'm going to item N now on page 3, and it talks about the requiring us to statewide to the state has the ability to change these rules at will with respect to these pollutants as by changing the law as amended, supplemented, superseded, and replaced from time to time. That sounds like a really vague something to put into requirements for us to adopt. So is that vagueness going to be addressed somehow?
So I can tell you that the process is 1383 itself delegated to Cal Recycle to come up with the regulations. It's Cal Recycle that runs the numbers and came up with the 3,512 tons. So the language in that section is intended to say that if either the legislature overrides that through a bill, or if Cal Recycle goes back and recalculates, that's the number that we have to comply with.
Okay, that's thank you, Rob, for that clarification. I'm looking now on page 4 and produced at one of the following facilities. I'm surprised to see this. They can be can be basically not considered permitted, even if we've set those up or they've been set by other people. That can also be overridden by Cal Recycle. So we are directed to certain facilities to do this, regardless of the ones that we've already established.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that as with many of these things, vendors who want to participate in this program are going to have to get certified by Cal Recycle that they meet the standards.
Well, this doesn't get less detailed, so I'm not going to ask about each item that's in here because you're doing a good job of trying to answer those questions. However, as I understand it, that these requirements that are in this law, I'm trying to find the area, talks about applying to commercial and residential facilities. So as it talks about land use, I'm trying to find that area that talked about 500 square foot of grounds and how in fact that's going to be planted and allowed under our residential. Is that under this section?
So that's actually in the MWILO that you adopted a few minutes ago.
The one that we did. Okay.
Yeah, and so again,
that for in spite of how I wanted to vote. Okay, because
right,
it's
so
such a small area.
Right. So let me give a little clarification. So that number one, that's been in effect since 2015. It's nothing new here.
That one, yes. That's one.
Number 2, the 500 foot is on any project, any landscaping project that requires design review or a permit from us. So if any of us decide to go out and do something in our front yards, it's not triggered.
Okay.
Where it's triggered is basically on new subdivisions, new projects, where there's a discretionary review process and we require a landscape plan. So that's where it really applies.
So it would be like the project that we did a few years ago off just south of Osage Park, those like 7 homes that met certain environmental standards. There's very little land that's planted to get there in grass. I assume that's an example. But
yeah, like we did that project, approved that project a few years ago off old Blackhawk. The new one, that's where the old nursery was on Communitas.
Okay, that's,
Projects like that.
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
that's a little different from these 7 homes that are considered to be environmental homes off of Orange Blossom Way.
I know which ones you're talking about, yes. That would have applied back then as well.
Okay, so sorry that I'm just having a lot of questions, so I will stop with answering all my questions because you can see where I'm headed. So thank you.
Okay,
Oh,
any other?
I'm sorry, one last question. This
Sorry,
record keeping, the record keeping czar that we have to hire, are there a lot of, that is going to require us to hire another person because this record keeping is so extensive? Is that correct?
That is likely.
And so that would be an additional person coming to work for us to do the record keeping, not to accomplish the goals, but to do the record keeping. So I'm having a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay, Robert?
Great. Diane, on the very first page and the second paragraph, I just want to try to understand what's meant there. It says the intent and purpose of SB 1383 is to reduce landfill and pollution, fight against climate change. And then it says reduce and recover food from landfill to feed those in need. What does that mean?
What page is that, Robert?
It's on the very first page of 8.2, the second paragraph. And it starts with the intent and purpose. So I'm taking reduce and recover food from landfill to feed those in need and recycled organic material into new products.
So that is the portion that Judith referred to earlier, and that is a lot of food waste from restaurants and other facilities gets diverted to landfill, and it can be diverted to homelessness establishments and other agencies. And if it goes to landfill, it produces methane, and it's a food source, and that is part of the requirement of the state that Recycle Smart is handling for us. So they're connecting with our restaurants in town to develop a pipeline and divert the food that's being wasted.
So what is, I know in the past, I've always asked this question, why wouldn't restaurants, when they have a big bowl of bread, hand it to, a homeless community or homeless people? But I thought there was liability issues where a restaurant could be liable in case someone got sick from the extra food that they're feeding, let's say, homeless people.
Well, it depends, I guess, upon the business and what their policies are, because I do know that there are certain businesses that do divert their food. Basically, what the state is doing, it's mandating a program to do so now.
So is this optional for a restaurant to participate or not participate?
So if you go back to the slide that Judith showed you, that she showed tier 1 and tier 2 establishments in Danville. Tier 1 was all grocery stores, supermarkets.
Right.
For them, it's mandatory. When you drop down a little lower, it's I believe optional. But that's something that Recycle Smart is handling in their ordinance.
Okay.
And with the refuse companies, it's not something that we're going to have any direct involvement in whatsoever.
And that included the schools as well. I think it started off with Foz, Crow Canyon Country Club, St. Isidore, Charlotte Wood, Vista Grande, Baldwin, and that's the second tier list that they're working with.
Yeah, they're handling all of that. We don't have no direct role in that.
It's also not to say that various health department requirements still come into play. So what we're talking about here is not leftover prepared food from a restaurant, but rather, perishable items, produce, day-old bread, those kinds of things that would otherwise end up in a landfill that could be, diverted for the benefit of other folks that might not be fed otherwise.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
I just think that what you're saying, Robert, though, by looking at this, when it says recover food from landfill, that particular statement right there is a little, misleading when you say you're recovering food from the landfill. Maybe that verbiage can be from
Exactly.
dated
Oh,
funds to
perfect.
prevent them from going to a landfill, right?
Exactly.
'Cause
Yeah.
I don't think we want to eat from a landfill.
Duly noted.
No.
Right, okay. Okay. Newell.
I would just add a little clarification, and I have another question. The clarification for Robert is this. White Pony Express and another entity have been operating in Contra Costa County for several years that actually do all of that about the recycling for food from a variety of things. And they are the ones that have expanded to step up to do that. So as Rob said, we don't have to worry about that. And it's not going to necessarily put undue burdens on other entities. Either it works or not in terms of how those laws work. But Rob, isn't it, and to Diane, I mean, the real bottom line with this, and the reason why there's a lot of vagueness in it, that if you go back and look at 1383, it's about one paragraph long, and not one of the things that are in here that we're having to do is in the original legislation, because basically the legislation gave authority to create this board to do what they want, when they want, with these lofty goals. So our ordinance has to parallel that it's going to change, and it's subject to whatever Cal Recycle and that board comes out with. Is that correct, Rob or Diane?
Yeah, I mean, this is similar to, you see it at the federal and the state level all the time. There's legislation that delegates to some administrative agency developing regulations, and they develop the regulations through, there's a rulemaking process, there's public hearings, public comment, et cetera, et cetera. But you're correct that the legislation itself that the legislature passed and the governor signed into law did not contain 99% of the detail you see here.
Right. And I think the other thing for Diane was when we look at our paper issue, 30% recycle, that's pretty common paper. We even use that, I think, in some of our products. You just have to, they put a stamp on there and it says that it is, and it's certified, they have the invoice. But I think some of us in campaign stuff did the same thing. That paper, that is a norm. That's actually a fairly low content for what you can do in some things. So you don't see us having any problems complying.
We're currently doing 30% organic recycled paper right now.
Yeah, just
Right.
as an additional example, we, Nicola was able to, we had to renew our contract for the newsletter, the quarterly newsletter. So we built in there that for the editions that come out after January 1, they have to meet the standard. And the additional cost for the whole year was, I think, $510, something like that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that.
Dave.
Yeah, Diane, quick question. What do you anticipate, or how do you anticipate our current relationship with MCE? Because clearly we're buying clean energy from them, but now you've got 1383 that says, hey, you got to be able to buy 3,500 tons of dirty energy, so to speak, or recoverable energy. What do you think the potential impact is on our relationship with MCE? And secondly, what's MCE doing to help us comply going forward?
Well, based on a conversation that I had with MCE last week, they are very actively right now, they are working on establishing and finding a source of biomass and creating a government waste for the JPA. Right now, it is going to take time. It requires infrastructure. They have 2 biomass facilities right now that are not, they're not qualified. They don't certify under biomass. We are going to be looking at PG&E as well. They have 32 biomass facilities, but I would suspect that they are in the same shape that MCE is. I think we have a lot more opportunity with MCE because they're smaller, and based on the conversation, the PG&E rates are going up, and they're going up significantly at the end of the year. So we look like And again, this is very preliminary, but based on the conversation with the CEO of MCE, the PG&E rates are going up significantly, and it's going to put MCE back at a competitive advantage. So I think for the interim, we're going to continue to look at PG&E and look at the resources. We certainly don't want to walk away from clean energy. Everybody is in the same boat right now as far as trying to comply with this. So there's more that's going to be revealed, but I think we're in a good relationship with MCE right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Short-term thinking is great. Short-term reaction is super, but what's most important here is recognizing that MCE is a good partner, and they're invested on helping us comply. And it's going to take some time, but with what's pending or potentially pending with increase in rates from PG&E, I think that'll persuade us and other jurisdictions to stick with MCE and ride this through, and give MC an opportunity to help us, comply going forward in the longer term.
And I might add to that, Councilmember Fong, we did, we have been partnering on the legislation with MCE, especially, access to the biomass funding that went through the legislature. And we also were looking at SB 619 with them as well, but we did let them know that we have a reprieve as far as the fines are concerned, but we literally do need help to comply with this. And we are looking at what our lowest common denominators are, and those are our energy resources.
So maybe when the mayor opens public comment, we had 2 MCE people in the attendees, Martin Bond and Zay Parent. Maybe they can share some light.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there any other questions right now, Robert? I'm going to take you off mute. There we go.
So when we look at 3,500 tons of recycled organic material, I have no idea what that looks like. And then I go to the definitions, and it actually defines what that means. So it's 0.08 tons of organic waste per California resident times the Danville residential population.
Mm-hmm.
Once we do that math equation, is that a number that we can actually attain, or is it not attainable in the first year?
I think that's what Judith was talking about. The assumption is without something big, it's going to be difficult to achieve. So we'll hope.
It's about 30 times, I believe, what we use right now.
Okay. Yeah, because it's hard for me to put this in perspective. And I heard what Judith said, and it didn't sound all that positive to me. But if we don't attain this, there's apparently some penalties involved here. Mm-hmm. So the first year we sort of have a hall pass. Second year the penalties will go into place, basically.
According to SB 619, and if we don't show enough intent to comply in the first year, they'll retro the penalties. So we definitely need to show intent to comply with SB 1383 next year.
And then what's the message we're sending to our residents? What do we want them to do?
Well, they're already doing.
Well, I understand I understand the businesses and the commercial,
right?
But the residents, I mean, I don't feel like they're exactly affected right now, but at some point they could be. It's an education, right? There's an educational component here.
Yeah, look, the analogy I would give, and I think Councilmember Stepper brought it up earlier in reference to something that former Councilmember Szymanski used to talk about on clean water. Mike voted against the clean water assessment every year because he believed that it was an unfair mandate. These programs are largely aimed at this part that in this item 8.2 is largely aimed at us as the entity. The part that Judith talked about earlier is aimed more at individual consumers, like making sure you put the right stuff in the green can and not in the black can. This part is talking about what we do as an entity to purchase paper, compost, mulch, whatever, cleaner energy, et cetera, from biomass. It's this part of the bill is really aimed at us as an entity.
Okay.
And Councilmember Storer, we've been on a lot of webinars around this. Really what the intent is, and it's why it's starting with local government, is to create that demand to turn to the PGEs of the world and create an infrastructure with renewable gas that is not yet available. It's really intent is to create demand so that the demand is placed in infrastructure. It actually expedites the infrastructure of renewable gas and these types of biomass facilities.
Okay.
So I would just add, we already have contracted at Recycle Smart back when Karen was on the board that an anaerobic digester is where we send all of our green waste. So that has food, all of that stuff that goes in our green container. Well, in that process, we get two products. We get a really great compost material that's great for gardens and things like that. But in the process, it also produces gas, which produces electricity. Now, we have the 100% of that capacity purchased from under a contract with East Bay Mud. And what the challenge is everybody's competing for that because that's a form of a biomass. While it's not that efficient, maybe doesn't meet all the standards. It is there, the technology is there. It's a question of time before it really gets there. But
and one other comment, Councilmember Storer, you asked what our residents can do. They're already doing their part. The most impactful thing that our resident can do right now is to switch to MCE Deep Green, which is a penny more per kilowatt hour, and that would reduce the carbon footprint significantly in town. So if there's any ask of our residents, that would be my first ask.
All right, very good. Thank you.
That might be a good idea to put in the newsletter as well to make sure that people are aware of that. So are there any other questions? Because I'd like to go ahead and open it up to public comment unless we have more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Renee, what Diane just said makes a lot of sense. Everything else seems a little bit in the abstract, and we got these targets that we need to hit. But when you take it down to its lowest common denominator and say, "Hey, go to deep green," that's a message. That's a solid message that we can send our community, which
Right.
the right direction.
Absolutely. And that's why, push that out and get that information out to everybody. It's just like with garbage and what's recyclable and what's not. It's a very confusing, very, very confusing for a lot of people. If it's confusing for us and we're trying to figure it out, imagine people that aren't involved in that on a daily basis trying to figure it out. So let's go ahead and open it up to public comment if you don't mind, and see if there's anybody out there that would like to address the council on this issue. Marie?
There are no hands raised to speak on this item.
Okay. All right. So then we're going to go ahead and bring it back to the council once again for discussion and or motion.
I would move that resolution 7621 approving a recovered organic waste product procurement policy as required by SB 1383.
Second that.
And I would just
Go ahead.
if I could, I would just add that the concerns that everybody has mentioned, the lead agency for that is Recycle Smart. They're going to send to all of our residents what these rules are. We can echo that and reinforce it to push it a little further and know that all of us in this jurisdiction are also in MCE. So I think we're all on the same page for this.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, the motion maker of the motion and second, I'd also like to just clarify the language on page 1 in reference to recover food from landfill. If we could just clarify that, just so that we're not looking like that's what our intention is.
That's in the staff report, not the reso.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure. So
Yes.
I just,
A good point.
You got it.
As
Good
revolting
point.
as it is not,
Is
it's not
it?
actually a resolution, so.
okay, that's nice to know.
Just one more comment, as we keep talking about getting rid of CO2, which is the food that grows our plants, CO2. So,
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor right now. Marie is going to do a roll call for us.
Yes.
All this talk of food has made me hungry.
that's true.
Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
No,
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes, with the clarifications in place though, but yes.
yeah.
And the motion was carried 4-1 with Councilmember Stepper voting no.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 9. Item number 9 is our town council reports. Are there any reports from the council? All right, I would just like to add that we had a wonderful ceremony from Veterans Day for the Purple Heart designation. The veterans put on a wonderful celebration all the way through Sunday, very well attended, very educational. It was great listening to the speakers. And it was also nice. The council got together on our own dollar and provided breakfast and served breakfast to our veterans. Very well received. Great opportunity to give thanks to all they do for us. And we had a great showing and a really nice presentation, as well as a nice program that was put on by the Veterans Memorial Building and all of the people involved. So I want to thank them as well as council for a wonderful past Veterans Day. And on that, what I'd like to do is go ahead and adjourn this meeting and go into adjourn to and call to order the Danville Disaster Council meeting at this point. And I'd like to bring up item number 11.1, which is a report on the upcoming activities and events. And we are joined here. It's already on the screen. Here we go.
Sorry, clarification, Renee, for where we started this meeting. So were we bringing that back to under council updates about the next agenda, or was that coming back on the next agenda with respect to the parklets?
We had a consensus to put it on December 21st. That's it.
Okay, all right, sorry, I just
So the
wasn't
discussion and
clear.
everything will be there, but it's
So now-
on the agenda to consider. That was the consensus.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, so that we decided that when we were under public comment. That's why I wanted to bring it back under this so that we had an opportunity to do that. But we went ahead and put a consensus, and it was a 5-0 vote.
Okay,
at that
thank
time.
you.
Okay, sure. So now we're going to move on to the Disaster Council.
Okay, great. Thank you and good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. If you're at me, then we're at the home stretch. So let's get going. Some of the ways that I like to support the program is to take the fear out of emergency management, really, in my way of talking with people and sort of brainstorming and sharing, building partnerships and serving the community from a collaboration perspective. I mean, that's really having each other's back is really where it's at. And so I really enjoy making sure people know who I am, where to find me, and what sorts of resources I can be to them. And so one of the ways that I do that is enjoy working with all the groups in our community and our partners out there in emergency management. Without each other, we really wouldn't be able to succeed. I like researching new partnerships, working with all of the nonprofits and county departments and fellow towns and cities as we share best practices. It's really just a really nice collaboration and partnership. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions, or you can wait to the end. It's totally up to you. So besides the people part, which is really crucial and probably the majority of really what we do in emergency management, there are the non-people side of things, like the quick reference wallet card, the Go box or a website or a portal that we need to go to get alerts or updates. And yes, that is a very own state-of-the-art, old school EOC Go box. You'd be surprised how important those things are actually to the people that run the EOC sections. Although our hope, I think, someday is to get those down to sort of maybe a binder or so. But anyway, that is a real Go box for logistics section. Preparedness is planning, and planning is really preparedness. We can't really do one without the other. If we're doing one, we're basically by default doing the other, which is fabulous. There are a couple of very exciting updates for next year in terms of plans, and that's our local hazard mitigation plan and our emergency operations base plan. As I mentioned, I enjoy going out to the schools and met with St. Isidore. We did a review on even their forms and documentation and kind of what's required. And also the Rittlinger Care Facility. I reviewed their plan and gave them some feedback, and they were quite appreciative. I've never been sort of just a check the box kind of girl. I like things to be meaningful and purposeful and understandable, so that we're all on the same page and doing the same good work. And it's been a busy few months, actually, in terms of response. We've had our fair share of power outages, and 4 to be exact. We had one in August, September, and 2 in October that were significant in nature. And of course, we had our atmospheric river come through our town and did to us what it did to many of our fellow cities and towns, and created some landslides and some mud flows and some trees down and leaning power poles and the like. The 2 that I have examples here is Castaneda Court and Lagonda Way right down the street here. So preparing for those responses is really a good thing, which is why we enjoy doing what we're doing. So leaning forward into 2022, basically winter preparedness is a big deal, as we've already seen. We also may not in particular be out of wildfire season. I mean, the weather today, was gorgeous, and you just never know. Sometimes November can come back and get us. I plan on going to all the CERT field supply areas and meeting the leaders and understanding sort of how they have their caches and what they have in their cache for response with our volunteers. And so I'm in the process of doing that. Also continuing to work with and meet, and even sometimes in some situations do field tours for the utility and communication companies and get briefings. We've had Kinder Morgan, I've reached out to our sanitation and all the communication folks. And then I mentioned earlier, one of the exciting plans for next year that the county will be embarking upon with all of its jurisdictions is the local hazard mitigation plan. And we recently were awarded from the state one of our action items that's in our current plan. And it's to repair and improve sort of channelways for the performance of better water flow. So we're looking forward, and Stephen Jones is on top of that, and we're looking forward to seeing that to completion and getting the benefits of that. As far as trainings go, there's just a list there of the ones that I continue to do new employee orientations as new folks come on board. It's a great way to meet people and see kind of what their background is. Also refresher training. If I'm not invited to a particular meeting or group, I'll invite myself. I'm not shy. The police department lineups trainings were very good. We did some early shifts on that one, and they seemed quite appreciative. And I learned a lot from them. And then there's just a few examples of some of the things I try to attend. I was fortunate enough to attend the police department scam awareness with our seniors. It was a small but mighty group. Got to help a 90-year-old sort of get the nixle on her phone, which was quite nice. She was kind of my role model. She was a very spry 90-year-old. And that was great. And the diversity uncovered training was very helpful. And the volunteer organizations assisting in disasters did a pets and partners, because as we know, our pets and our furry friends are quite important to us. And in order to get cooperation from our residents to respond accordingly, we want to make sure that our other extended family members are well taken care of. So other things I attended, sort of leadership driven, and also the pipeline overview that I mentioned earlier from like Kinder Morgan and places like that. So drills and exercises, have been a little light because of sort of still gently moving into in-person meetings and getting togethers. But obviously that California Great Shakeout is an awesome way every year to sort of just practice the stop, drop, and or the stop and hold on. It's a really good resource to just kind of remind us of the various simple ways we can prepare, and how many few seconds or minutes it can take to kind of bring that awareness to light. I did observe the Golden Eagle Regional Transportation Exercise, mostly from sort of public information, media relations perspective. I just sort of observed that one. That's really all the opportunity was for that. I'm looking forward to the county tabletop exercise in December, right around the corner. We don't know exactly how that's shaping up yet, if it's going to be in person or if it's going to be a little bit of both. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that. And then next year, there's also supposed to be a county OES flood scenario sponsored exercise and drill. So very excited to see sort of some of that in-person thing come to be. As I mentioned sort of earlier in my first slides, the community outreach is just sort of super near and dear to my heart. Here's some examples of places. I think the mayor mentioned earlier, the Kids Country. I'm really impressed with going into their facilities and seeing how they do things. Garden Montessori School, and there's a few others there that you can see. Very, very excited about getting out and meeting people and making sure that they know who I am, and doing kind of a needs assessment in a very sort of helpful way. And most everybody says without a doubt, it's great to know you're there and what you have to offer. So hopefully I've instilled some comfort in coming back and having people reach out, which it's been happening. So that's a good thing. Care facilities, still going to offer and get out to every care facility I can and meet the executive directors and the staff that do a wonderful job in taking care of our either disabled folks or people with disabilities or our elderly folks in the different care homes. So looking forward to continuing to put those on the books. Then sort of the other piece of non-site field tours in terms of community outreach is I enjoy writing the newsletter articles when Nicola has a spot for me, and I did a winter preparedness one. Look for that in January for our Live Locally newsletter. And then I do take pride in my reputation that people do ask for my help and ask for my expertise. And so I looked over the Blackhawk beat, one of our sister sort of jurisdictions, and gave them some input, and they were appreciative of that. And then also because of my connections with the sheriff's office in the past, one of our former chiefs of Oakley has a daughter who's going to Rocky Mountain College, and she reached out. A lot of times the college students are doing papers or projects or thesis on emergency management, and they go to sort of a trusted source and kind of talk over their project and sort of ask questions and get feedback. So I really like working with the kids in the schools at all levels. And if I don't have the answer for them, I certainly will put them in touch with somebody who does. I don't ever want anybody to go away disappointed. That is it for my presentation. I want to thank everybody, and I am here to answer any questions, hopefully. Hope there's no trick questions at this hour, but.
All right, if you want to take us off your share screen and get back, there we are. All right, Karen.
So as I'm walking around with the dogs, I see a lot of care homes that I hadn't realized were there. They're pretty hard to recognize. Some of those are those 6 homes, have 6 residences, and how critical they've been to some people I know and friends that they're kind of a step before they go to the Danville acute care, which we're very fortunate to have. So I'm wondering how we're keeping fresh the video that was made from the grant to help those people evacuate in an emergency, because the staff turnover for all of our businesses, but especially in care homes, has been really acute. So
Yeah, I work very closely with San Ramon Valley Fire. They're the ones that did the DVD. Believe it or not, that's a very hot item still. In fact, just a week or two ago, I delivered one. It's online, so you don't even really need to put the DVD in your computer if you don't want. You can go on the link. But they wanted to have a DVD in their little hot hands. And so I took them one and they were completely ecstatic about it. So some of that basic protective action, sheltering in place, evacuating, it's, you know, it's not complicated. So it's pretty much good material today, tomorrow, next month, next year, 5 years from now. But I know that the San Ramon Valley Fire has gone through some organizational structure around their doing their evaluations and inspections and whatnot. And so I can follow up, Karen, with them. And
yeah, I love the fact that you gave out another DVD, because as the management changes and the other people, it may be on a shelf. It may not even be something they've looked at in the last 2 years. And yet the people that go into those homes don't stay that long. So the people that need to be evacuated have different needs. So that's great, a great use of your time. Thank you.
And we have a steering committee that's county-wide that we just added somebody from, and we have a great San Ramon Tri-Valley area representation on that, disability access and functional needs, which runs the gamut from kids to elderly. And we just added somebody from, additional person from the San Ramon Valley area that I think runs board and cares or either residential care facilities for the elderly. And so, yeah, we feel very dialed in, very proud of our work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Robert.
Great, thank you, Marcel. Thanks for the input, and love having these discussions. And as you know, the more we talk about it, you know, the better informed we are in case there is an emergency. You know, we're not exactly deer in the headlights. We have some protocols in place, but the schools have their shipping containers full of products. You must be in the loop with each one of the schools to figure out how to access those during an emergency, and you know where the key to the lock is, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the very first presentation I mentioned that Danny Hillman, one of the deputy assistant superintendents, I toured every single school site and actually laid eyes on all of those Connex boxes, and he explained kind of the access for those. And he was offering up his sites to do drills and exercises. I mean, it just was an amazing partnership. So yes, very aware of all of that and been to every single school.
Yeah, don't be a stranger. We'd love to hear your updates.
Absolutely. I'm coming back. You can't get rid of me. I'm like a bad
girl. Thank you.
Newell.
Marcelo, thanks for the update today. One thing I haven't heard about, and I know you're still getting up to speed on everything. As you know, our FEMA compliance, one of the things that we learned from other disasters was how much work it takes. And if you don't do the work ahead of time and the disaster comes, you're not gonna get FEMA reimbursement. And we set several contracts in place. Where we have the review process, are they current? What changes the economics and or the service levels? Are there other vendors that are available now? Because we pretty narrowly had only one that could really do everything we need. So you don't have to answer it now, but it'd be great to have an update, say, yep, here's where we're at. These contracts are active. We've renewed them or we've not renewed them, just where we stand.
Yeah, let me come back to you at my first report in 2022 with that. I'm big on actually doing as much in-house as we can. I mean, like even the other city.
I'm sorry, I want to be clear. The contracts that we set in place, this is stuff we can't do. This is debris removal and stuff. This is something that if we have a earthquake, or even a fire, we're going to spend $10, $12 million in the first 30 days.
Yep.
Those are the contracts for our FEMA compliance, not the stuff that we do in-house. It's all our external is what I'm asking.
Right. Yep. I'm pretty sure I can speak confidently that the few that we have are solid, but I will confirm and come back with that in 2022 early, just to
Thank you.
Reassure everybody. Absolutely.
Dave?
Okay, Marcel, a couple of questions. One, I noticed on your PowerPoint that you have been working, or at least reaching out to the HOAs out there, and I noticed that at least you have one, Hidden Valley HOA. What's been your success rate with the HOAs, especially some of the larger ones like Crow Canyon or or some of the other pockets like Greenbrook?
Yeah, they're all in varying degrees, and I've yet, I mean, I don't want to mislead you that I've even begun to even meet all the HOAs at this point. I'm still plugging through just as I am with all the facilities and whatnot. There are varying degrees of gung-ho and readiness, and one of the things that I know San Ramon Valley Fire really promotes is the FireWise program for wildfire preparedness. You can get certified in your community to do that, and so that's one that we really promote. The one that I had listed on the PowerPoint, I actually met with their safety committee and we went over, I think, all things emergency management really. And maybe it was even a little overwhelming for them. They haven't been back. So I think I sent them off with some pretty good buckets of work to do, but it's all varying degrees of readiness. And I really actually encourage that they work with each other and learn from each other and see, okay, who's at step, 14 and who's at step 3 and who's all the way to step 50, so it really, again, this is about helping each other out. I was actually hoping that COVID would teach us, even the healthcare system, which I came from many years ago, rather than being so competitive, to really kind of be more partnering like and learning from each other and helping each other out. And I think COVID taught us that, because no one system could do it all and without help.
Yeah, I would, and we'll talk offline. I know as a result of the most recent rains, some of these developments really started thinking a little more around catastrophic preparedness. And so I think sometimes it takes a catastrophe or potential catastrophe to wake people up and realize they need to have a plan. But I know, for example, Crow Canyon Country Club is very interested in having discussions about emergency preparedness, not only for the rain, but also for the fires as well. And, their HOA now is taking on a responsibility to try to help those residents as well. So something to consider going forward is to revisit some of the HOAs, but more importantly, some of the larger ones.
Absolutely. And please help get the word out that I'm here and offer for me to come and meet with their safety committee or whomever, their leadership or executive team. That's really where a lot of the great discussion happens, and I'm happy to do that. So yeah, if I don't think of them first, definitely, toss my name out there and my contact, please.
And then the second question is regarding the businesses in town and surrounding community. What level of effort have you spent with them, and what's been your success rate working with them?
Yeah, I've mentioned with Jill, I've worked with Jill Bergman, and we've every opportunity I get with a various project or task or assignment that I can fold the businesses in. She knows I'm here for them. I want to get out and meet with them just like I do everybody else in the community. And I went to their business meeting, and I think she was even going to maybe put something in a newsletter or on a web page or whatever. But yeah, I am here for everybody. I have yet to actually, with COVID, get into each very many of the restaurants or businesses. But I also met with, I think last time I mentioned, I met with our chamber president, and also, so anybody I can meet that's an inroad to a larger group that can start spreading my reputation and my name and contact out there, I definitely would love the help on that.
Okay.
So it's all a priority. Yeah. Simultaneously.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind. So it's always difficult to go last because a lot of my questions are asked, but I just have a little kind of in between questions in there. So one of them is in reference to the video. So the care facilities that video was geared toward was more of the smaller care facilities and how to execute an evacuation with the smaller care facilities. But we do have quite a few larger care facilities as well in our community. Is there anything that's being done to help prepare them other than their own, owners per se, but is there anything that we're doing to help them?
when I go into the different care facilities, no matter what the size, and especially the larger ones, like you say, because that can sometimes be a bigger concern, I offer to come and help them with their drills and participate with their evacuation exercises. Everybody, without a doubt, says that they have them by licensing regulations. They have their drills religiously every month. Whether there's a video for the larger one, I'm sure the regulatory agencies have something, and I can follow up with San Ramon Valley Fire on that, and see if there's any plans to go into the larger facilities with something like the DVD.
Well, and even to that point, even the smaller ones, the video that was done for those help a lot with how to evacuate somebody with, perhaps that is, has special, needs of, getting out of the building or whatever it may be, right? Some type of handicap or whatever. But these videos are great just to get even to the larger ones so they can see how it's done. And you mentioned that, you've been to quite a few of the care facilities. Are you reaching out to them, or is it the other way around? They're reaching out to you?
Mostly it's me knocking on their door.
Okay.
I'm persistent, I'm a persistent gal, and in a friendly way. And so if I don't hear from them, I'll keep, emailing or calling with follow-ups and that sort of thing, just to make sure. I've only had one so far, and I don't even remember who it was, but I had one say, yeah, we're in good shape. We've got a nice plan. No, thanks. So, okay.
Yeah, thanks. I'm on my way.
Yeah, that thought did cross my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not gonna force myself in. But most are, like I said, most are like, what is this thing called emergency management? Is it kind of scary? Is it spooky? Is it this? Is it that? Oh, well, just, put all your concerns at ease. And
yeah, absolutely.
With a smile.
Yeah, well, right. And so the other thing, Newell hit on the FEMA, so I won't go there. But the other thing was in reference to the schools. Obviously we're not the schools; they were their own school district, but they've done a lot of modernization. And a lot of the schools, the blueprints that we still have of these schools are obsolete. And so I'm not sure if they've given you their new plans, or because I know we keep binders on them, if ever there's an evacuation at a school, to have an updated, site plan of these schools. I don't know how many of them. I know quite a few of them have just got done doing their modernization plans, and then COVID hit and so forth. So just a thought. I wasn't sure if you had those updated ones, because I know a lot of times we don't get them unless we ask. And as far as schools are concerned, I know that we were doing, the active shooter, if somebody is on campus, active shooter drills, and in conjunction with the fire, police, and the sheriff. Are we still doing those? And do we have any of those scheduled for this? I know usually summertime, correct?
Yeah, we don't have any scheduled. I am encouraging that a lot when I meet with fire and meet with our PD, that people are very, very eager, and post-COVID, as we keep coming out and doing in-person, they're very eager to be a part of exercises, a part of our drills, and really partner with us. And so I'm continuing to promote that and try to help make those connections, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I will follow up with Danny on the site maps. I suspect that fire is probably more their automatic go-to to making sure they get the maps, as opposed to me or us. So I'll loop back with him. It's a good point.
Great. Yeah. And even though, it's not always fire that's the emergency, right? So it's
right.
Nice to know.
One of the kids' countries I visited was, you all probably saw the thief that walked on campus more easily than we wanted, and was stealing wallets. So that was like an intruder, right? We think fire, we think flood, we think earthquake, but that was like a intruder situation for them. And so.
Right, exactly. And the high school as well had some incidences recently as well. So that's what kind of sparked that in my mind. The other thing is that I know that, majority of us have gone through the training, emergency preparedness training. And I know that we're probably either due for a refresher or to, I think Dave probably would want to go through that program as well. So it would be nice to know when they plan on rescheduling those again, as well as at one point years back, we were provided a duffel bag with emergency items in it. And I'm sure by now that needs to be a little updated as well. So I was just wanted to throw that out there to you. And I'm sure maybe Joe's a little bit more, got a little more hand in that one as well. But to make sure that we're all prepared so that because you mentioned about, being here to help us, we want to make sure that we're here to help you as well in case there is an emergency. We all know our part.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's funny, those duffel bags, I studied mine quite religiously when I came on board. Interestingly enough, they're nicely put together with not a lot, if anything, really that expires, if you will. And I encourage people to customize them and add, there's little places in there you can add things that might be crucial to you. Yeah, I mean, I can easily go through my new employee refresher little spiel with Councilmember Fong if he's so interested, and I even offer it as a refresher for anybody. I think one of our sort of highlights next year with moving into the new EOC is to, and I can explore this more with Joe and with Joe in my meetings, but was to kind of have like an EOC open house and invite some of our external partners and kind of do a tabletop exercise. I mean, I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea. That's great timing as well. It gives us the opportunity to really get a feel for what it's all about. So that would be perfect. That'd be perfect. Okay, I don't want to belabor this anymore. Everybody's looking at me like, okay, it's late. Is there any other questions? All right. Well, thank you once again. Thank you for the information. We knew you'd be, jump right in and dive right in, I should say. So thank you again. And with that, this meeting of our disaster preparedness is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here and happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.